Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Liquid IV, the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being. Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code SACRED at checkout. That's liquidiv.com with the checkout code SACRED. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code SACRED at liquidiv.com.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is brought to you by, well, you. If you want to learn how to support our show, go to patreon.com/laststandmedia. Greetings and salutations. Welcome back to Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast. This is episode number 254. My name is Colin Moriarty. I'm joined as always by my son, Chris Raygun. Chris, how are you today, my friend?
I'm well. I'm doing good. I don't know. It's one of these kind of nothing days. The problem is when we do these episodes, I'm on the West Coast. So whenever we start the show, Colin's like, "How's your day today?" And for me, it's like it just started, so like it hasn't really had a chance to get worse.
Yeah, I got to be better. I got to be better. I got to be more mindful as a host.
Like I'm always just like I was asleep a half hour ago. You know,
me too. So don't worry about it. Yeah, I also was asleep a half an hour ago. But yeah, when we were just talking about that, and I was saying that Chris was like, "Oh, that's." And I'm like, but the difference is I'm on the East Coast, so I woke up at 12:40 or something. But here's the thing I wanted to say. Chris and I were talking about this just before we started recording, and I said, let's just save it for the show. But what I wanted to ask you is this, or kind of pose to you is this. I get annoyed. My mom does this, where it's like, why don't you get up early and start your day and do things? And I'm like, why? First of all, why do you care when I'm awake? And second of all, if I'm just doing what I need to do at a different schedule and sleeping in a different schedule, why does it matter to you? Why is it so important for everyone else to suffer? Yeah, it's like, I get up in the morning. It's like, okay, I'm not. So
yeah, everybody's got to synchronize the start of their day for some reason. I have the same amount of day that you do. I've been abusing my time ever since Creator Clash stopped and all that stuff. So I've been going to sleep at like 5 a.m., waking up at like 11:30, 12 maybe. It's amazing. I forgot how much I missed it.
It's good shit. Love it.
It's great. I like the nighttime. I don't know. I like having a lot of night.
Yeah, me too.
I like the day too. Don't get me wrong, but like for some reason, I don't know. I feel more creative at night. There's not a lot of people. I don't have to worry about a lot of distractions at night because not a lot of people are like hitting me up at random, like, "Hey, what's going on? You doing something? Like you want to get lunch?" I like that too, but it's good to have hours and hours of not having to worry about that at all.
Right.
So I'm just a night person. I don't know.
I also just put my phone on silent, like do not disturb at all times. So even if someone's calling me or whatever, I'm like, I don't know. There's nothing. Like my aunt called, and I love my Aunt Joni, called me a couple weeks ago, and she's like, "Hey," she calls me Chowder Man because I have a huge head, but I had a huge head when I was a kid. So she legitimately only calls me Chowder.
Wait. She calls you Chowder because you have a huge head?
Yeah, that's apparently like an old term for like having a chowder. Or a chowder head is an old kind of like, I think it might be a New York Italian thing or something, but for having a big head, like a chowder.
That is crazy.
So I had a huge head, and my Aunt Joni would call me Chowder or Chowder Man. That was my name, and still to this day. And I don't mind it at all. I think it's funny, but she called me the other week, and I was like, I just texted her, I was like, "Why are you calling?" I only want to hear from anyone if someone's dying or dead.
Yeah.
Otherwise, no calls. Do not call me. And then the people that I work with for my house, like the people that are doing like some plant work around my house, it's like they always want to talk on the phone. I don't know how we got on this, guys. I also wanted to show you this. I got my My Pillow thing in the mail yesterday. I bought a My Pillow like 6 months ago, and I was talking about it, and I really like it actually. And so now I get things in the mail, and it's the My Pillow 2.0. Right there.
Wow.
And
the pillow too.
Let me cover up my address and I'll show you that there he is.
There he is. He's just thinking about that next insurrection.
In all of his splendor.
Mike Lindell. What an interesting guy. Weird guy. But anyway, I don't know why I brought that up either. That was just on my desk and I was looking at it. Dustin Furman, executive producer, my sweetheart. How are you today, my friend?
Oh, I'm fantastic. And Colin, I'm happy to report. Chris and I talked about this on an episode that's going to launch tomorrow, but I think it's worth stating. I went to a Christiana Comprehensive History, episode 1. Quickly just browsed some of the comments. I see some people out there saying, sacred symbols brought me here. Dustin brought me here. Mostly say, well, there was like two or three sacred symbols one, and then one that mentioned me. So I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this should be a good claim to fame in any way, but happy to see lots of people saying they're checking out the doc after our extended conversation last week.
A lot of people wrote in about this. Out of Focus podcast wrote in and said, what's up, CDC? Long time, first time, and all that jazz. After hearing the enthusiasm with which you speak about the roller coaster ride that is the Chris Chan docuseries, I've set aside my hesitations and started this 50-hour series. One of the first comments on the video is Chris's prom date being his mom is the ultimate Chekhov's gun. What have I gotten myself into? Will I one day wish for this sweet embrace of oblivion to set free my consciousness from the information that it has been burdened with? Is this series a thought virus that I will not be compelled to spread, that I will now be compelled to spread across this blissfully ignorant so that I may take solace in knowing I alone do not bear this cross? I'm on part 16. And a lot of people were writing in about this, and I'm in the liquid. I was very excited because I think I texted you guys on the thread. I am in the Liquid Chris part now, and I am finding it so funny. First of all, the guy that does Liquid Chris is funny as hell.
Yeah. Yes. It's an amazing impression.
Yeah, and
in the contest, dude.
Yeah, right. So I'm getting into that. I felt bad because I kept messaging you guys like over and over again that I was like, I think I'm just annoying everyone.
No, it's good.
Yeah, because
I like the updates. I just don't necessarily have anything to say other than like yes. I can respond with just yes. There was this
comment on like episode 15 or something where it said, and this is just in the YouTube comments, and I sent it to you guys. It says Chris quoting a Family Guy scene which quotes the Bible instead of just quoting the Bible really epitomizes his whole personality.
Also, when you sent that comment to me, I was looking at it. I was like, when did I quote the Bible?
Oh yeah, I can see. Yeah.
Damn.
We can never call you Chris Chan, like just as an honorarium, although you're not a woman, so it wouldn't work for you anyway.
Yeah, it wouldn't work.
Chris Senpai would be more appropriate.
I don't know. Is Chan an honorific for a female?
I thought it was. I thought it wasn't.
It is.
No, I don't know what the hell it is.
Coon and Chan, I thought, but maybe I'm wrong. I don't know.
It's a person. The speaker finds a person who is endearing.
Oh, endearing.
Young children, close friends, babies, grandparents.
Oh, okay. I always thought Chan was like little girl and Coon was a little boy, but I'm probably wrong about that.
Yeah.
I mean, why would I know? I don't speak Japanese for a fucking I don't know any Japanese. I remember I was dating this girl for a little while in San Francisco just randomly. And we had just gotten our Vitas. And so this must have been in like late 2011 or early 2012 and she was over and we only had Japanese games because you remember the Vita came out in like February 2012. And I was playing like Everybody Golf or something like that. And she was like, earnestly was like, do you read Japanese? And I'm like, are you kidding?
God, I gotta clean my glasses here.
Clean your glasses up.
Do you guys, so I know this is a really tangential intro, but like,
please.
Do you guys know what Ortho K lenses are? Have you ever heard of this?
No.
I've heard of it, but it is.
You've heard of that?
Ortho
K.
Ortho K, maybe not. Yeah, Ortho something.
So listen, this
talk to me about it.
I've been blind for as long as I can remember, basically, right? Like I've needed glasses since like I was 6 or something. And somebody recently told me, like, why don't you just do Ortho K lenses? I'm like, what are you talking about?
Oh, no,
there are these contact lenses that you wear to sleep.
Ooh.
And they reshape your cornea so that you can see in the morning when you take them out.
Oh, I've never heard of this. I'm looking it up now. I thought I saw a commercial for it or something. That's not right. That's not true.
That doesn't sound real. That would be like,
does it just decrease throughout the day? Like your eyes like, fuck this?
That's what I mean. Like, I don't know how, like, it doesn't seem like, that would be like if you were paralyzed from the waist down, but there was a pair of pants you could wear to bed to make you walk the next day. That isn't, like, it doesn't make, that makes no sense to me.
Yeah.
They reshape your eye?
Yeah, I don't like that.
Well, here's, I think, some important context. I'm a contact wearer that I use daily, so I throw them out every day. That's a thing for me because of allergies. I can't reuse them. They just fall out of my eye eventually. So I have accidentally slept in my contacts many times, and it ruins the next day for me. I have a headache. My eyes feel terrible. And so surely these are different. I understand they're designed to be slept in, but not only are you sleeping in it, but it's shaping your eyeball. It sounds
crazy.
Yeah.
I can't believe
I'm intrigued by this though.
I can't believe I'm 29 years old and this is the first time hearing of this. You know what I mean?
Yeah, I've never heard of that at all. I thought it was like some sort of, I was looking it up. I'm like, have I seen a commercial for this or something? But no, the only videos that are coming up are like seminars.
It's crazy. Anyway.
Yeah, I don't like, here's the thing about contact lenses. Can you just wear glasses?
No, absolutely not.
Why is everyone touching their eyeballs? See,
that's the thing, right?
That would be crazy. I couldn't even begin to imagine wearing a contact lens. I can't touch my eyes. I can't even squeeze fucking liquid into my eyes. You know when you have a thing and you have to just, like, my eyes, like, no, you're not doing it.
I can't do that either. No. The thing to me is the second, like, I can wash my hands incessantly, right? Like like 3 straight minutes of washing my hands, dry them off in some way, open my contact lens, and the second I touch the lens, I still feel like I'm dirtying it somehow. Like there's some like microfiber that's getting in there.
Your eye will take care of that.
I don't like my eye's been through a lot. I don't need to give it any. I don't need to give it any more to take care of. You know.
Yeah,
dude, I can touch my eye anytime, anywhere. Sometimes you have to if you accidentally screw it up. You know, you gotta feel around in there. You know, sometimes they can get stuck up in your eyeball a little bit if you're not careful.
Oh my Christ!
Yeah, no problem, dude. Just
I'm totally happy with glasses.
Yeah.
Yeah, me too. I used to wear them and I was fine with them too. I just, again, couldn't imagine touching my eye like that on the regular. But
it's good.
Well, this is Sacred Symbols, of PlayStation podcast.
Yeah.
Thank you for joining us today. It's episode 254. Like I said, we go live each and every week. You can get it 3 days early and ad free by supporting us on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate you. Sacred Symbols Plus is one of the biggest perks you get for supporting us on Patreon. Of course, you get early ad-free access, the ability to submit your questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas, monthly Q&As, name in the credits. I have to do an update for the credit. I haven't done that in too long, actually. So we have to get on that. But Sacred Symbols Plus is the biggest perk, and that is twice weekly exclusive episodes of the show. I did what I would assume will probably go down as one of the most popular episodes that we've ever done, over almost 300, which is David Jaffe and I debating for 2.5 hours over Game Pass. And people really, and we could have gone longer, by the way, but I actually had to go. I was already late to a meeting, so I like literally had to go. I should have known better with Jaffe, right? But we always have a good conversation. My whole intent with that conversation was to be like, everyone knows how I feel about this shit. You tell me how you feel, because you're totally diametrically opposed to how I feel, and then we'll hash it out. And we did. So you can check that out. I have it's already in the can, but we just haven't published it yet. But there's a very special interview that I conducted. Chris was actually complimenting on me on it before we started, because he already watched it. I appreciate it. Thank you. That will go live soon. I don't think you'll find it too shocking. And then we did a call-in show. You guys did a call-in show that will go live the day after this goes live, I believe, on Patreon.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. I gotta say, Colin, I love doing call-in shows with you, but Chris and I, when it's just the sons, special energy
the boys.
Going on.
Yeah.
A lot of I think the funny thing is just Chris and I can't keep it together in between calls. In fact, there's a lot of in between call chat that has nothing to do with the calls, video games, Sacred Symbols, and so I think you'll all really, really like it.
We offset it though, because it is I think a little bit longer. You know, we do a little bit more.
We went a couple extra calls to make up for our insanity.
Cool, man. Yeah, I love the call-in shows. They're fun. It's cool. Always good to hear from the audience. So people can look forward to that. That'll go live imminently, or might already be live depending on when you're hearing this. Your Kingdom Hearts episode with Brad Ellis from Easy Allies is now live on YouTube as well, but the audio version is still on Patreon. Our PlayStation All-Stars Battle Royale 2 80-person roster is live. Yeah, we have a lot over there. PSX, Final Fantasy 16 deep dive, and all the rest. Thank you from that. So, Dustin, you and Dagan Moriarty, my brother, co-host of Knockback, co-host of Constellation, our conversational podcast, you're going to Too Many Games, June 23rd to 25th. Talk to me about what's happening over there.
That's correct. So, Dagan and I are going to be headed to Too Many Games. That's at the Greater Philadelphia Expo Center, which I think is in the King of Prussia area of Philadelphia. And we were asked, we applied to do a panel, and then they said, hey, let's do you one better. We want to have you guys be guests at the event. We, of course, said yes, because that sounded awesome. So Dagan and I will be at Too Many Games, and we will be doing a panel. We don't know what day it is. If you want to plan around that will be announced hopefully soon, but I honestly don't even know what the day is yet that they're going to schedule the panel. So please we'll have all the information on that. But yeah, last year, Dagan and I were there just in kind of an undercover hanging out type of way. We had a small gathering at a local brewery that was awesome. I'm assuming we're going to do something like that again. But this is a really awesome retro-focused gaming convention that if you're into that kind of stuff, it is one of the absolute best. I've been to a bunch of these, and this one, I would assume, is the biggest one on the East Coast. So it's worth taking the drive for. And there's a bunch of other really cool guests there, too. It was kind of shocking seeing the guest list that has Dagan and I on it, and then David Hayter is on it, and
right.
Charles Martinet on it as well. So,
and we were talking about how David Hayter charges this and Martinet charges that for, and I want you guys to charge even more for your autographs.
What,
if Martinet's asking for $50, I want you to ask for $75. What'd you say?
Oh, I was going double.
Oh, okay. $150.
Double that. Yeah, $150, and that's each for Dagan and I.
Oh, okay,
and
cool.
I got to point out one thing. I'm going to put a note here. And Dagan's not here to defend himself, but I'm going to put in. I asked Dagan, I said, we got this form for the guest list. Please, submit the information and the photo. Have you seen Dagan's photo that he submitted?
I've seen it, but I don't know where it came from. It must be I don't know if like he got, I don't know.
Send it to Chris.
Yeah, send it to Chris. I don't know.
I'm putting it on the screen too.
I don't know where it came from. Because Dagan, so for people that don't know, Dagan's a professional animator, and for a long time he was at Sesame Workshop. And I don't know if they did like photos there or something for them. Like, headshots. Let me see. I'm going to click this.
He's looking just absolutely gangster.
Oh, yeah, yeah.
I mean,
this must be from some photo shoot that they did like at Sesame or something for the executives or whatever. I don't know. But
the fact that this is the photo he chose is one of the most baller things I think I've ever seen him do. Or anybody really. So
he looks great.
Yeah.
Well,
so more details soon, but it's exciting. We're excited to do this. It was super fun last year, and we'll keep you updated.
Cool, man. Yeah, I'm excited for you guys. Have fun over there. Hopefully people go and check that out. So yeah, that's June 23rd to 25th in Eastern Pennsylvania. What else? Oh, merch, laststandmedia.store. If you guys want shirts, stickers, and so on and so forth, hats, whatever the case might be, sweatshirts. We appreciate you. All sold right from my house, bundled up by Micah herself and sent out along on its way. Free shipping in the United States on all stickers. And finally, please leave nice reviews for us on podcast services. You can leave a comment on the video, thumb us up, do whatever you can. Help more people find our show as we continue to grow, and we appreciate it. It's all thanks to you, who for some reason listen to this show and like it. All right, let's get into some things here to discuss from the audience. Brucey Thomas wrote in and said, "Hey, gents, this question is specifically for you, Colin. When you are playing the straight man to Chris's comedic genius, are you actively forcing yourself not to laugh, or are you so used to playing the straight man that you don't even have to think twice about it? Is this a practice makes perfect situation, or are you just not easy to make laugh? I'm very easy to make laugh, thus making the straight man routine right in your wheelhouse." I had to ask this question because Chris usually says something at least once a week that has me doubled over in laughter, and you almost always keep it together. I take pride in playing the straight man personally, and I find more humor in playing the straight man. So it is a little selfish in some way too, let me give you an example. I love Rodney Dangerfield, and I was recently showing Micah some Rodney Dangerfield clips from Johnny Carson's show. And one of the great things, he comes out and he does his routine for a few minutes, but then he goes and sits with Johnny for most of the video. And Carson is just staying out of the way and kind of goading and asking questions, and Rodney will be like, "Oh, I was talking to my wife last night, Johnny," and he's like, "Oh, what's going on with your wife?" And it's like, it's not about him. You're putting it forward. Yeah. And you're trying to stay out of the way. The thing that bothers me a lot, Chris, is, and I got to be honest, people say things about me all the time. The comments usually don't bother me at all. But one comment that bothers me is when they're like, "Oh, Colin stepped on a joke." Because I'm like, I hate doing that. That's never the intention. Mm-hmm. I like to stay out of the way and try to facilitate the joking. So when something goes over my head or something, I'm bummed out about that. But I think I'm a pretty relatively good straight man. And is it experience? Yeah, but I think I like being very straight and facetious. I think it's very funny. And it's the way I've always been. So
you got straight pride.
That's right.
There you go. That's a good joke.
So Brucey, I mean, it's nothing I'm trying to do. I just think that, Chris is obviously the comedian on the show, and you got to kind of stay out of the way of the person, and funny things happen from all of us. But I don't know. I think that I think that a funny person shines most when the other person is like deadpan. You know, in my opinion.
I will say though, this is the worst. I hate write-ins like that. It's like, oh, Chris is comedic. It's like when you're introduced, because I've done stand-up a couple times, and I've watched stand-up like happen a lot, like in open mics and stuff, and I've seen people like, this next guy is really funny.
Oh yeah,
comedic genius.
Like,
and then everybody's immediately. And then they bring him out on the stage, and everyone's immediately skeptical. It's like immediately, like it just turns the entire room against them.
Yeah, it's a little bit of a 4D chess thing Brucey did to you there. He's actually diminishing your confidence.
Tell us some jokes, funny guy. Come on, Chris.
Man.
Oh yeah, make me laugh. Make me laugh.
Tell me how many. I can't even tell you how many times I've actually heard that in earnest.
Like, have you been at a family reunion and someone's like, "Oh, Chris, he's a YouTuber. He tells jokes," and it's like, "Oh, Chris, tell me a joke."
Dude,
what's one of your jokes from your video? Tell me a joke from your video.
That's not even. That's like this is very PT. This is very triggering for me. Actually, this is a real experience I've had many times. So I don't go home anymore.
Yeah, that's why you left again. Yeah. All right. Well, something that is objectively funny is the next topic. And Nawaz Qureshi wrote in and said, "Hey CDC, I was just aimlessly scrolling through Twitter and saw that Chris had retweeted a clip from the TV show The Good Doctor, calling it one of the funniest things I've seen in my goddamn life. For some context, the clip shows the protagonist, who is an autistic young doctor, hysterically screaming, 'I'm a surgeon,' over and over to his supervisor, who watches on impassively and does absolutely nothing. The contrast and emotion between the two characters is absolutely hilarious." Dude, I can't believe the show's been on so long and it has not yet been totally absorbed by the internet the way it is being and is about to be.
Yeah.
There are people right now watching. I am seeing more and more clips every day of this show as people are going in and watching it. And it is authentically hysterical. Like, I don't know what else to say. I'm sorry. It's no offense to autistic people. A lot of people tell me I'm autistic. But this is hysterical. I don't know what else to say about it.
I think what's funny about it is that you're watching it and you feel. It's been a long time since I felt this. I might have never felt this in my life, but I was watching like clips from this show, and I was having the thought, like, sincerely, I was like, this seems really offensive. Like, I don't know if this is a really accurate depiction of what this is like, because there's so many clips of this show. I'm like you, astonished that I haven't heard of this before today, or haven't seen a clip of it before, this past week. For whatever reason, it's just punctured through into the zeitgeist, and now, like, I'm just everyone's speed running this show, basically, like catching up to it. And every clip is amazing. There's this clip where he's not cooperating with a gunman in a supermarket, and he gets some woman shot, and and he's like screaming at one of those automatic hand dryers in a bathroom, and I just, every single
dude, the one I love is when he's like in the middle of surgery and then he just starts screaming while he's in surgery, and like everyone's like, what's wrong? Like, he saw something. It is a little demeaning, because it's almost, it has a vibe. I mean, it has like a Lassie vibe, in the sense it's like, what's wrong, boy? What's wrong, boy? Tell me, boy.
I know exactly what you mean.
And it's but another great one that I saw, Chris, that you have to seek out. Well, there's two of them. One is when he's walking like C-3PO, and the video just says, like, why is he walking like C-3PO? And he really does walk like C-3PO in like the scenes. And then the other one that you want to see is when he's with the pregnant woman who's about to give birth. Have you seen this one?
Yeah, and he talks about how nice the head shape is or something.
Right, and it's like, but then it ends up being his kid. Like, that's the twist, is like, that's his girl and that's his kid. Yeah. Too, like, at the end, if you watch it all the way through, and I'm like, oh my god, this show.
There's a great scene too where there's like an autistic patient, and he comes in, and nobody knows how to handle him, even though they're working with an autistic doctor, and he walks in, and they go like, hey, be careful around him, he's psychotic, and then he goes, he's not psychotic, he's autistic. And there's something about that sentence that is like delivered completely in earnest. I'm honestly, I'm really compelled to watch this show.
Me too. I'm right there with you.
I want to get merch. I want to be dripped out in the Good Doctor attire. I want to get a hat. As much of this as I can absorb.
He's the Good Doctor, something special. And I mean, I had heard the name, but I don't watch network TV really anymore. And I thought it was, and it might even be in the same series as like The Good Wife and The Good Fight. That's what I thought it was. But The Good Wife was a show I actually did like back in the day. And that show was awesome. That show was about like a woman who was married to a politician and he cheats on her. And so they divorce. And it's about like kind of her power play on him. And it was pretty good. So I think they're like all in the same family, but I don't know how you get from that to this. I don't know how that happened.
The Good Place, The Good Wife, The Good Doctor. Place. And it's a massive... Dude,
the good cinematic universe.
But let's be honest, though. Let me just be honest. I support the writer strike. But let's be honest. When you see some of the Good Doctor clips, you're like, this is the shit that we're missing right now. I mean, it's like, all right. I mean, if anything, that bolsters. Because like we need so much more of this. It reminds me of that One Tree Hill episode. The One Tree Hill episode where I just saw that. I had never seen The Heart.
Yeah.
I had never seen that clip until last night. It's so funny that you say that.
Wait, how did you see it? Because Chris and I watch it on the episode tomorrow on the Colin show.
It was just on Twitter they have like the For You and then the following. Yeah. And I'm tabs, and I gotta say the For You tab,
it's getting good.
It's fucking good, dude. I mean, I don't know what they're doing. People are acting like Twitter's like dying. I'm like, I don't think so. Like, it's getting me like this, and so that's how I saw it. Was because
it's so funny.
It's like the same. I keep telling Michael, like, I get this. I get dog and cat videos to the degree, like an insane degree, where I'm probably annoying. I'm like, look how cute this is. Look how cute this is. Look how cute this is. I'm not looking for it.
It's just on the For You. Yeah, that dog eating the heart on One Tree Hill. Like I saw that clip years ago. Like, and it is still one. But that's the beauty of that of cable. Did you see, by the way, that they deployed Imagine Dragons to?
I did see that.
There's other videos coming out now too that are, because I thought surely this isn't real. Someone did this as they put an edit together, but no,
that's real.
They sent them out.
I think it's a studio exec that did it. It's like, how do we it's a union busting technique.
Let's bust this up.
Yeah. Forget about the Pinkertons. Let's get Imagine Dragons in there and then have everybody recoil in horror.
Yeah. Like you have options. You can like hire the Pinkertons. You can go with the mob.
Yeah.
Or you can just, and give the mob some no-show jobs and they'll come and bust some heads, or you just hire Imagine Dragons. And I actually listened. I don't really know very much of their stuff, but I do know that they sing songs that I would know or whatever. So I watched one of the acoustic sets or tried to, and I'm like, this does suck.
Yeah, it's horrible.
Earnestly. Yeah. I'm like, I don't understand who they know where the bodies are buried, dude. There's something about people that don't belong where they are, in my opinion, where it's like, you know something. You definitely know something about something, and no one's going to fuck with you.
Sacred Symbols is sponsored by Liquid IV, the category-winning hydration brand fueling your well-being. Learn more at liquidiv.com and use the code SACRED at checkout for 20% off your order. While Colin and I are no doubt a nerdy couple that likes to play a ton of video games, we also share a love of fitness and we both work out regularly. Now, Colin has his own peculiar routine that revolves around not eating most of the day and capping things off with hard cardio and some weightlifting. But I do things a little bit differently. And for folks like me who want to hydrate throughout the day, Liquid IV may just be for you. See, in preparation for my own workouts, riding a stationary bike, doing some bar, or going for one of my daily walks, I like to focus on hydration because it increases my energy level and performance. And while there are a lot of choices out there to reach this goal, I gravitate to Liquid IV for multiple reasons. First and foremost, it's easy to take and it tastes wicked good. All you do is mix their powder into 16 ounces of water and drink away. There are a dozen flavors like strawberry lemonade, passion fruit, and watermelon, and no matter which variety you choose, you'll be boosted by Liquid IV's 5 essential vitamins: B3, B5, B6, B12, and the king of them all, vitamin C. Adding to Liquid IV's value as a better way to hydrate than simply drinking water is that it comes packing tons of electrolytes, 3 times more than sugar-filled sports drinks that hydrate you literally half as quickly as Liquid IV. Whether you're feeling run down before a workout, need some extra energy in the morning, or are simply looking for a better way to stay hydrated, I truly believe Liquid IV does the trick, and I've been drinking it almost every day as of late. Crafted with premium ingredients and free of common allergens like soy, gluten, and dairy, Liquid IV is a great way to stay hydrated, take good care of your body, and achieve higher performance when working out. Grab your Liquid IV in bulk nationwide at Costco, or you can get 20% off when you go to liquidiv.com and use the code SACRED at checkout. That's LIQUIDIV.com with the checkout code SACRED. That's 20% off anything you order when you shop Better Hydration today using promo code SACRED at liquidiv.com.
All right. My friend, I have one more inquiry from the audience before we get into some games talk. And there's lots to talk about with games, of course, this week. Ben Stewart wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, me and my fiance have our wedding in October." I do too. "And we're currently discussing when is the best time to do the speeches. In my opinion, the speeches should be after the main meal. I'm sorry, but my partner prefers the speeches before. Colin, I know you have the big day coming up. So what are you and Micah decided? Big love from England, fellas." I don't know. What I want to have is I want to go around the room and I want everyone to give a speech.
Every single person.
I want everyone there to say something nice about me.
Not Micah.
No, you don't have to say anything about Micah.
It's not about her. You know, the day about her.
Just completely ignore.
I don't know. Like, it's interesting because I was my brother's best man and I was 17. And I winged it. I gave a best man speech. It's on tape. Maybe one day we'll dump it. I haven't seen it in many years. But I just winged it. And he had a pretty big wedding. And everyone was like, "Oh, that was great." But I think I remember my Uncle Mike making me nervous, kept asking me, like, what are you going to do for your speech? Like, to try to make me nervous. What are you going to do for your speech? What are you going to do for your speech? And then I ended up doing it and it was fine, but maybe it could have been better. And certainly as an adult, I would have done a better one. And I guess Dagan will now be in the position of giving me a speech of some sort, but I don't really know I have no idea how things are going. We're doing things a little bit differently. Like we have a first dance planned with our song, but we are inviting others to dance like with us, like with their significant other. So it's not just us, you know, and we're not doing, in fact, my mom's trying to change the rules, but I think I'm going to hold fast. It's like, we don't want to do first dances with our parents. Like, we want to like keep it going. I don't want it to be about me too much. I know that sounds weird, but it's like, it is our day, but we want it to be like a party, you know? So like, so as minimal, like we have open bar, fucking buffet food, do whatever you like, you know,
Cookie
get whatever
table,
you want.
Maybe.
What do you want?
Cookie table? You know, I know Micah's from the north. Or
I was going to say we have some sort of dessert plan. First of all, the cake is going to be nuts. We like went to this really, really nice place to get a cake. I don't like sweets. I don't know if you guys know that about me. I'm not a dessert person. I don't eat cake. But Mike is like, you got to try some of these things. And I was like, damn, dude, when you're paying for it, like when you're like, we're going to a nice ass bakery, it's like totally different story, I think, in my opinion. And so it's going to be all great, but we want it to be a party. And so I don't know. But I'm sorry. Do you the correct question, Chris, is do you want to give a speech?
How long? What's the time limit on it?
Chris pontificates.
How long is a speech at a wedding usually?
I don't even know. Like 30 seconds to a minute, maybe a couple minutes.
Yeah, I could do like a minute, 2 minutes.
Yeah.
I'll do a set.
I want Chris to ring the glass. That's what we'll have. That'll be Chris's function, is to ring the glass.
Oh man.
As a ex-wedding videographer, seeing the speeches are always one of the most interesting parts of the night because, man, there's some absolute train wrecks. I loved always seeing the girls that they would like get handed the mic and you see the shaking and you think it's because they're nervous and then they can't stop crying the entire time and you're like, just stop. This is messy. This is just give it up.
Yeah.
I got to suggest though, I think that in my opinion, the speech should be before the meal because that's the time for the toast.
Right.
The toast before the meal.
Yeah, you get it all done right there. Like, there's not going to be multiple toasts, multiple disruptions. Maybe we'll have one disruption and I'll be like, does anyone have anything to say? Or can we just get this show on the road? And we'll be like, all right, we're good. Let's be done. Yeah. It's going to be fun. We rented out a country club. And it's going to be awesome, I think. We'll see. We just got our invitations in too, so those will be going out soon. All right.
Hell yeah.
So Ben, congratulations to you and your wife, and good luck to you. I didn't know people got married in England. All right, let's see.
Only divorced.
Yeah. Oh, only. You know what? I read an interesting stat about divorce. What's the famous stat about divorce? Right, that half of all divorces end in marriage, or end in marriage, half of all marriages end in divorce. Right. Yeah, that's like this famous stat, but it's different. I didn't know this. That actually the divorce rate for first time marriages is only 38%. And I had never thought about that because of course you always think like when you get married a second time and third time, you exponentially have an increase of getting divorced. But I never really figured out how it was baked into that number. And so people make it seem much more dire, in other words, than it is. You know, it's like, well, it's not. You're counting people that got married 4 times in the pie. And I never thought about that before. So we have like a 38% chance of failure, but a 62% chance just by pure math. I like that. I like those odds.
It's like an Xbox 360.
Right. And maybe like an Xbox 360, if this suffers, I'll wrap Micah in a towel and leave her outside for a little while.
Or in the oven.
In the oven. Yeah.
That's right.
Low level.
Right.
Dustin, as a person who did wedding videographer footage, do you feel comfortable at wedding? Like when you're at a wedding, do you not kind of seek out the videographer? Like just to see, you know?
Well, it's one of those things where I was filming so many weddings and then getting asked to do weddings of people I knew that I felt like I could never go and enjoy myself at a wedding. So now when I do get to go to a wedding and I don't have to do anything, it feels kind of odd, even years later.
Yeah.
I am always, a little curious about what the video, what kind of gear they're using. And I don't know, you get, particularly with videographers and photographers, you get some interesting cats, some people who maybe are overly aggressive, doing some stuff that you wouldn't even think of. Very odd people. There's some real stinkers out there when it comes to these professionals, but I don't know if there's just not enough of them out there or price discrepancy or something, but I've seen some wild shit at some of these weddings. Just
did you just describe a person as a cat?
Like a strange cat.
Like a jazz musician?
Did you pick that up from me? Or have you always said that?
I haven't always said it, but I know it's a term. I don't know if I've heard you say it. I've heard other people say it.
That's like a jazz musician term. You know what
I mean?
Well,
I was going to say, I picked that up from Dagan. And I'm surprised you've never picked it up. I say that once in a while too. I don't know where some of this vernacular comes from. It's like what we were saying last week about marinade. It came from one dude that I knew literally 20 years ago. And that's the only reason I even say it. So I don't even remember his name. I don't even remember that guy's name.
Poor guy.
That might be more about me than him, though. All right. Let's get into some of this news, my friends. A lot to talk about here in the world of PlayStation today. I want to start with this good news for Sony. Just a congratulations to them, I guess, into the HBO. Video Games Chronicle reports, as many outlets had, that Warner Brothers Discovery, the owners of HBO and HBO Max, announced that the show reached over 30 million users on HBO Max, which is just absolutely insane and is the company's, or one of the company's most streamed shows ever, and one of the HBO's and the brand's most popular shows of all time. That's pretty crazy, considering this is a brand that owns The Sopranos, The Wire, Game of Thrones. I mean, this is a pantheon of absolute. You have to be a fucking idiot, right, to think that The Wire isn't good. Right? Like you have to be absolutely touched in the head not to understand how The Sopranos is one of the greatest movie or shows of all time. And so being considered and having those kinds of numbers like that, like Mad Men style shit, I didn't expect that. I thought it would be good. I didn't think it was going to be that good. And in hindsight, I'm not sure it is that good. I really liked it a lot, but I'm actually softening on it the more time goes on, which makes
it's not like Sopranos good.
Right.
It's great, but you said, part of that pantheon. I think it deserves to be part of that pantheon, obviously, but of HBO, we'll say. But I don't know if I would put it in like greatest TV shows of all time.
Oh no, I wouldn't either. But I guess the point is that it's considered that already. I think for a lot, the numbers are indicating that it's on that trajectory and happening very early. If you look at a show like Mad Men or even Lost and shows like that, it actually takes a season or two for them to become big. This is already just huge. Like I think that's the great impact that this show has, is that it didn't take any time.
Well, yeah. But that's also because it's, based on something,
That's true. Yeah. That's a good point. Sorry, I'm writing something down. So yeah, congratulations to HBO and to Sony and of course, friend of the show, Neil Druckmann and others. Super proud of them. I mean, it's so strange, especially with someone who I consider a friend like Neil, like a personal friend, that he's earnestly like one of the biggest names in TV right now. It's kind of wild. It's like, holy shit, dude. I mean,
it's very weird.
When I first became friendly with him, he was still just in quotes, like a creative director, but he's now the head of Naughty Dog and a TV writer and doing it's a kind of incredible. I wonder where he is on the writer strike. I'm sure he's for it, but if he's like out there doing anything for that or what. And I'm grateful that this show won't be interrupted by the writer strike, which a lot of other shows are being interrupted. It reminds me a lot. Shadows obviously of 2008, the last time this happened. And I love that people point back to a lot of individual shows as like, look at how I think Heroes is probably the biggest one that people point to, but there's a bunch of others about like these shows were just killed by the writer's strike. And I wonder which ones this time will suffer the same fate. But in the meantime, we'll look forward to The Last of Us season 2. Yeah.
Let's hope The Good Doctor survives.
The Good Doctor, I think, will be all right. In fact, you'll be pleased to know I read that it was renewed for another season.
Amazing.
And God. That renewal had just happened in recent weeks. Okay. Guys, this story is going around here. I was considering writing this up, but I just don't think we have enough information about it. But it's certainly an interesting piece of news. So InsiderGaming.com, Tom Henderson, wrote this story based on a Twitter user's claims that basically... So let me back up. Apparently, Sony had a game in development, an unannounced sci-fi FPS at Final Strike. You guys might remember Final Strike as the studio that made that random volleyball or not volleyball, dodgeball game for EA. Do you remember that game?
They have? Oh, yeah.
Oh no, Rocket Arena is. I'm sorry, it's the wrong company. I'm thinking of someone else.
Rocket Arena.
Yeah. So let me pull this up here real quick and make sure I have the right guys. Yeah, so EA published Rocket Arena. Yeah, this is the one. I'm thinking of a totally different thing. It's like that crazy kinetic action hero shooter, 3v3 arena shooter, I guess. Anyway, Sony apparently had been working with these guys for 3 years on a game, an unannounced multiplayer game. This could be one of the vaunted games as a service. And claims had started circulating in recent days that the plug had been pulled on this game. And originally I wasn't going to report on this because, first of all, it's not the first time that I've heard a game has had a plug pulled on it. And I can't confirm or deny some of this stuff. So it's hard for me to work those angles. And I don't want to put bad information out there and then have people cite this. I know how it will go, right? I'll report on something someone else had said, and then they'll claim that I fucking said it. And so I like to just be very wary of reporting those things. However, Tom Henderson wrote about this, and I think Insider Gaming is a generally reliable source. And here's why I believe it is because he says the claims come from a Twitter user who he names, who provided Insider Gaming with evidence of the claims from an ex-developer at the studio under the condition that the source remain anonymous. So he has seen information, which is, and I'll tell you this as an ex-journalist and someone who still breaks news, I guess, today, is that's actually a step beyond one source. In other words, you want to verify your source with a second source, but if you have someone that's showing you primary information, you don't really need a second source as long as you believe that the primary information is real, which it certainly is, and I've reported on those things in the past as well. So in other words, what I'm saying is that this is probably real. As a result, Final Strike Games it apparently laid off like half their staff or something like that, and the game has been canceled. This is why you let studios do their thing, I think, and don't announce things too early or whatever, because this to me is irrelevant because it was never announced. So people look at this and say, oh, look, this is a horrible thing for Sony. And I'm like, maybe. I mean, certainly producers bought in on a project, should the story be true, that was not coming to fruition to PlayStation standard, but they're willing to cancel it and just walk away from it. And I don't think that that's necessarily a bad thing. It's much better than them releasing a Godfall-like game or a fucking Babylon's Fall-like game or an Anthem-like game. If you're not getting it right.
Or Redfall.
Exactly. Just walk away.
The curse of the fall, you know.
The fall, yeah.
Fall in their name.
Godfall, Redfall.
Stay away.
Fallout 76.
Yeah.
John Garvin, get away from the Ashfall name. We need a different name.
Oh, no. Yeah, get that fall out of there. Falls will fall.
Yeah, fall.
Well, maybe that'll have an opposite effect. We have a game named Fall. It'll be
it's like an Uno reverse.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's funny, man. Like, this is bad news, but also good news. It's a game that's lost, but a game we don't have to endure. And we're going to talk about a studio closure later in Pixelopus, and so we're going to get to that, and I'll leave most of this for there. But I don't look at culling as necessarily a bad thing. I know this is going to sound like people are like, well, it's a kind of a fanboyish thing, but I'm like, no. You cull when the product isn't up to snuff. You don't just buy in and release things because you've put them into motion. That's bad. And I think Sony realizes that its advantage over Xbox in games is quality. If there's a Sony stamp on the game, it's got to be high quality. There's no reason to release anything that's bad. You don't need to. Your games, as we will talk about later too, are selling extraordinarily high. So, I just wanted to point out that, we hear this, the sci-fi shooter's canceled. I don't know if you guys looked at this story. There's art at the top of it. Is this real art from the game? This is what I'm confused about.
I don't know.
It's like concept art. It shows a giant metallic robotic like humanoid creature standing next to a guy on a horse with a sword on his back. Totally different scales in some sort of tundra. I don't know. I don't know where this art came from.
I gotta be honest. It looks like I don't mean to be offensive to the artist or whatever. It looks like AI art to me. Like it looks like an AI thing. I don't think it is. I'm just saying it doesn't look pretty. Like if this was concept art for something, I'd be like, this looks. I'm not inspired by this at all.
And maybe here I can try to do a.
Oh wait, I did a reverse stream. So this isn't from the game. I don't think. I don't know where this art came from.
Yeah, it's whatever it is.
Or maybe it's when I search for it there, it says Robot Uprising. Cool war robot wallpaper. But why would they choose this?
Is it a image that you can buy from a website, like a stock website? But even then, you should still, if you're reporting that, I would suggest, maybe it's not required, but at least put what it is or where it's from.
Yeah, I'm confused. They don't have any citation here on their story about this image, but it's definitely an image that's been circulated in the past. I guess what I'm saying is I wonder if that's the best, that like they have this, they're like, this is what the game is, and so they search for that, and that's what comes up.
Yeah.
As like the best representation of it visually. I have no idea. All right. Let me see here what else we have. So nothing more to say about that. See, the beauty of these kinds of things is it's like the vaunted canceled Santa Monica game that no one knows much about. We know it takes place in space and all this kind of stuff that happened before God of War 2018. If you just keep your cards close to the chest, you at least don't have to explain what went right or wrong. And I think that's relatively smart. I mean, think about Phantom Dust for Xbox Phantom Dust, and even games like Scalebound. It's like, yeah, exactly. You just don't have to explain yourself. So who the hell knows what happened here? But it's obvious that something happened. Something's canceled. I believe Insider Gaming. So thusly reported. Talking about game sales, we were talking earlier about Last of Us doing well. Let's talk about game sales. Hogwarts Legacy. More than 15 million units sold, more than $1 billion in global revenue for the action RPG. The PS4 version is out, so people are playing that now. I guess I heard it's not that bad.
Yeah,
but I don't know.
I can speak on that a little bit just from the fact that I watched the Digital Foundry video, but I gotta say it seems to be pretty good. It's funny because I've seen conversations about it looks horrible on PS4. It's like, that's not the point. The point is if you're buying it on PS4, you know you're not getting the 10 out, like the premium highest quality version of the game. You're either buying it for a kid who's not going to care, or maybe you don't care, or you just want to play the game and you don't have the ability to get a PS5 yet. And so you understand it's going to be a compromised experience. But it's impressive what they were able to do. There's a lot of loading in it, but I'm still very curious about the Switch version because that's going to be the most interesting part, because I would assume the Switch is less powerful than the Xbox One, like the original Xbox One. And that version looked a little gross, but playable overall.
Yeah, fair enough. I must say, man, I mean, there's nothing that shows how toothless social media is in a lot of different ways, or at least this sort of hyper progressive comic book, sort of liberal Twitter sphere. And I'm not talking about real liberalism, real progressivism, but the comic book version, the alternate universe versions have no power. And when I learned that and figured that out for myself, it was kind of empowering. And I think that this just goes to show you, like, it doesn't matter. People just are loud in these echo chambers, but they represent nothing and no one. And 15 million people, that's not a small amount of copies sold. That is one of WB's biggest games ever.
Yeah.
In the entire history of the brand. And that's crazy considering they've released Batman games that are critically acclaimed games. I think this is in the top 5. And it's probably going to end up being the biggest. So congratulations to them. Congratulations to Utah-based Avalanche. Love to see it. All right. Hollow Knight 2. Are either of you guys, and of course it's not called Hollow Knight 2, it's really called Silksong, but are either of you guys interested in this game by chance?
I need to go back and play the first one and finish it. I started it and I remember getting frustrated with it. I guess you could say I got filtered by it, but I want to go back and really commit myself to it when the time's right, because I love the art style and I love those types of challenging games. And Silksong, everything we've seen on it looks amazing.
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of the original game. I waited to play it on PlayStation 4. It's incredible. There's a lot of frustration, though, in the Hollow Knight community because they've really been rather cagey and weird about what's going on with this game. And I'm of the mind that just give them enough time. But when you show your game off fairly often and are willing to talk about it, you kind of have to be a bit more on, I think, more on the ball. And I say this because the game was supposed to come out in the first half of 2023. We are quickly reaching the end of that. And they finally said online, at least through their community manager, that they had originally planned to release in the first half of 2023, but development is still continuing. We're excited by how the game is shaping up and it's gotten quite big. So we want to take the time to make the game as good as we can. Expect more details from us once we get closer to release. Yeah, some people are annoyed by this just because it's like, why do you keep showing it? Why do you keep teasing it? Why did you wait so long to say something when people have been really looking forward to it? They don't owe anyone anything, but it really goes to show you how Hollow Knight is beloved. People are really looking forward to Silksong. And for people that are interested, if the one thing I'll say is Hollow Knight's hard. It's a hard game. And it's not like it's a Metroidvania or a side-scrolling action game in that vein, but it is not accessible for a lot of people, I don't think. It reminds me in its combat of the difficulty more of like a Dead Cells, which we'll talk about later, than a Castlevania Symphony of the Night. It's just not. It's very hard to get the platinum trophy, especially, which I didn't do. Is really hard. So it's not. I don't want to recommend it widely because I think that some people will just get their asses kicked by that game, especially if you're not up on 2D games, especially for younger gamers that just don't play or know 2D games. I mean, that's not the one you want to jump into. I'm not trying to say it's as hard as Cuphead. It's not, but it's up there. And so, yeah, I'm looking forward to Silksong. It's been a while, and take your time, but learn how to communicate with your audience too, or better yet, just don't say anything. I don't know what they gained by even announcing the game when you think about it. If it, it's like everyone that loves Hollow Knight is going to be all over it the second you announce it. And so just announce it when you're ready. But it could be that they just changed the game as they went along and needed more time. And it seems like that's the case. So we'll look forward to Hollow Knight 2, hopefully later in the year. But I bet you that game maybe doesn't even come out till next year.
Yeah,
all right.
Probably.
Let's see. What else here? Capcom. Just wanted to give a shout out to them. I guess it's a series of shout outs today. Video Games Chronicle reports Capcom confirms record number of game sales as share price hits all-time high. 6th consecutive year on. So they have made more money year on year on year on year on year on year is how you would spell it out. And they sold 41.7 million games during the last fiscal year. That is up from last year's 32.6 million. 10 consecutive year of operating income growth, which means a growth in profit. And Resident Evil 4, 3.75 million units sold. This is by the end of March 2023. So these numbers are old, really old. I would imagine Resident Evil 4 might have sold twice that at this point. And then Monster Hunter Rise Sunbreak, 5.45 million units by the end of March. They're doing great. They have Street Fighter coming up, which I would argue has the potential to be bigger than any of the Resident Evil releases, especially because it's going to be a game they're going to lean into for a really, really long time. So I don't know, man. Congratulations to them in the hopes that an Onimusha game might be coming soon. That would be awesome. The return of Devil May Cry, I assume, is inevitable. They have Exoprimal coming out, which is kind of revisiting a sort of Dino Crisis style thing. Hopefully Mega Man. I mean, where's Mega Man at? Something has to be going on with Mega Man. It's been 5 years. And Mega Man 11 sold really well. So congratulations to Capcom. Anything to say, Dustin? No, Capcom no longer, for sure.
Yeah. Well, they definitely have had a return to form after the, PS3 360 generation, where they're kind of chasing Western trends, I guess. And so to see them just kind of embrace who they are as a Japanese publisher through and through and make these awesome games, they're top tier for me. Pretty much everything they do. I'm not even really interested in fighting games at all, but because Street Fighter is a Capcom game, there's something there that I think surely this is worth checking out. But yeah, pretty exciting. And Colin, I gotta say about Mega Man, you gotta wonder, surely Capcom is looking at the success of Mario in theaters and Sonic in theaters, and I don't know, could Mega Man maybe even I'm sure they would be happy to be third place amongst those movies if they ever decided to do something like that. And as long as it was good, I think it could have that potential.
Mega Man frustrates me. Obviously, it's like my favorite franchise of all time, and everyone knows that, but it frustrates me just because it could be and should be bigger. I'm not deluded enough to think that it's like a mega relevant product, but they've not done a great job of keeping him really relevant. And what I mean by that is there has never been a AAA Mega Man game ever. Never. I mean, AAA in terms of the time, when you think about the times, like Mega Man 3 or Mega Man 6, these are obviously AAA games on NES. But what I'm talking about is a modern, so let's say disc. I don't want to say disc generation because Mega Man Legends wasn't a big budget game either. But they've never said like we're going to spend $100 million or something and make a fucking Mega Man game. And I don't understand why you wouldn't want to pursue that, because it's a universe that's already made and it is very stylish. That's what I think that they kind of don't understand is they have this potential Pokemon like, and they started to figure this out with Battle Network on GBA, but they have this Pokemon like group of robot masters, the bad guys in it, that you could turn into things that people would be interested in if you could just pitch it right, pose it right. And they just don't know how to do it. And I think that just comes from, I've said time and time again, I could write a great open world Mega Man game. And I've already said a million times what it would be. Combining Mega Man 1 and 2, takes place in a city, open world. It would be dope. And they just need to, there's so many people out there that love Mega Man and can figure it out. So, but I feel like there is something. Like there must be something in development. And if there isn't, they really don't understand what's going on. But I'm confident. Okay, I wanted to ask you guys about this as Destiny 2 players, specifically interested in what you think of this, Chris. Mm-hmm. Death Spank wrote in, a few people did, but Death Spank wrote in and said, "Hey boys, my question is primarily for Chris and Dustin. Bungie recently announced a 20% price increase to their season pass. No reason was given for the price hike, and you have to spend more silver than it's worth in order to buy it. What do you boys make about all this? As always, keep up the great work." So in their weekly blog posts, they post so much content on Bungie.net. It's like pretty crazy, but I guess that's why the game is so successful. They bury this thing at the bottom, talking about price increases for season passes. Now, I didn't know this, so you're gonna have to explain this to me. They have an old Xbox style point system where you have to buy points, and then I forgot. Remember, you used to have to do that on Xbox.
Yeah, Microsoft points. Yeah,
right. And which is a long time ago, but that's what it reminded me of. So you have to buy this silver. And I guess what people are saying is that there's no way to buy the equivalent amount of silver needed to buy the package. So you have to buy more. Yeah. So not only is the price increase going up, but like it's an uneven amount of silver. So you'll always have extra silver, meaning you're just buying a little bit more. It seems, I must be honest, this seems like they need revenue. I mean, I don't know how else you could explain it. I don't think it means they're in trouble, but what I'm reading in the Destiny community is a lot of people are really not happy right now.
Yeah.
And I'm wondering what you think.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's silly. I think it's a dumb way to, at the very least, if you're going to do something like this, don't make it so you have to overspend. You know, because it's still even if you did the price hike and allowed people to spend that exact amount, you would still be making more money. You know what I mean? And I think most people would be generally, they wouldn't be super happy about it, but they would at least be like, well, it's 200 more silver. It's not that much. But also, it really is the uneven it's the amount that you're able to buy that's really the problem.
Yeah, how much can you buy? 500 silver at a time or something like that?
Honestly, I don't know. I haven't really bought silver. What I usually do for season passes, I usually just buy the ultimate edition of the expansion, and that just sort of gives you every season pass throughout the year. So I don't really think about silver at all, but it is a Microsoft points style system where like, this DLC costs 800 Microsoft points, but you can only get, but 1200 is the lowest you can buy. You know what I mean? So it's, or something like that, or like a little bit lower is the lowest you can buy. So you have to end up doubling up your purchase, and then you end up with more silver than you can even, you end up with an amount of silver that you can't spend on anything, but you're also like halfway to the amount of silver that you need to get something, so you might as well get it. It's a whole, it's a dumb system, and I don't like it. It doesn't affect me personally because I don't really contribute to this economy in this way. I usually just buy the game and the expansion on day one, and that's really my contribution. But it's a skeevy kind of thing. I don't like it.
Yeah, I'm not. I want to. Dustin, do you have anything to say about this before I go deeper into a Destiny question?
Yeah, I'll just say that in comparison, because this I think the Microsoft points comparison makes sense, but it's very much a free to play game type thing where like Fortnite has V-Bucks, but just take in comparison, which I know they're not totally perfect comparisons, but you can get a battle pass on Fortnite for 950 V-Bucks, which I believe is $9.50. I think to get 1,000 is $10. And when you, throughout the course of that battle pass, you get 1,500 back if you complete it. So just think about that value proposition. And then you have Destiny, which again, it's not a totally fair comparison. Very different types of games where they're treating you like you're at an amusement park or something, like, oh, well, you got to get this combo if you want this or something, or you gotta spend. It just feels disrespectful. Just let people buy what they want to buy. If they want extra coins or whatever, then they'll do that. But to kind of force someone into buying something that they don't necessarily want or spend more than they have to, it just feels gross and like an old way of thinking when it comes to digital marketplaces.
Yeah.
Let me ask about this, a kind of a deeper probing question about Destiny is like, I just like clicking around, reading the comments on things and seeing how people feel. And again, you can't glean too much information out of Twitter. It's not, like we just said, it's not an accurate representation of reality, but I'm wondering in the trenches if you guys are seeing mirrors of this consternation in the actual game or in the deeper communities, because it seems like people are really bummed about Destiny right now. Like the game goes down a lot. It doesn't work properly for people. And I don't, again, I'm a fucking Luddite, so you got to take what I say here with a grain of salt, but I'm hearing that the game is accumulating so much, I guess, tech debt in some way that, and I guess just legacy debt from being alive for so long, that a lot of people just want them to move on. And I wonder what the plan is with that.
Yeah, I've heard about. I haven't really jumped into Destiny in a minute, but I have heard that it's kind of unstable right now, and like they take it down for maintenance a little bit more often than normal, which is kind of strange. I know that there is some. I don't know. It's tricky because what is special about Destiny in its current stage is that it is this. You are the same character that you started as, and it's been going on for so long. But also there's clearly tech limitations. I think one of the obvious tech limitations was in Lightfall, just the fact that you couldn't really have any NPCs or any civilians in this city because it needed to be populated with enemies, and there needs to be like, well, enemies are more important than NPCs, so it's this empty city, and there's like some story reason as to why there's no civilians in this city that you're saving. And it starts to read like, this is a game that's running on PS4 still. And it's not that hindering to the gameplay experience necessarily, but there's definitely a sense of there are things that they want to do that they can't because it's rooted in really, really old hardware. And there is some desire within the community to see what Destiny could be, if not limited in the way that Destiny 2 currently is. It's not to say that it's a bad game. It's not to say that people are necessarily unhappy with it. It's more so just the potential of newer hardware and what it could mean for it. So I don't know. I think it's an interesting proposition, a Destiny 3, but it's also a massive that's a massive shift at that point. And I think I wonder if Bungie would even be happy about having to do that yet again.
Could be that they make something new. I mean, they are making something new, but like that they move their sights onto something new entirely. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know.
All right. People say we need to bring up more games that look good because we don't talk about, we haven't for a long time, games that we used to read all the games that were coming out and the games that were announced. We just stopped doing that because people thought it was too laborious. And I agree. So I wanted to bring up this video I came across on PlayStation's YouTube channel for Warhammer 40K Boltgun. This game looks fucking awesome. I don't know if people have seen this or whatever, but it's a Doom-like, and what I mean is like original Doom-like shooter.
Boomer
so like
shooter.
A boomer shooter.
That's what it's called now.
Yep. And yeah, it says that here actually in the in the title. And I think it looks awesome. I just wanted to bring it up. I don't know if you guys are interested. I'm not a Warhammer guy. My nephew Dash, who's in 6th grade, I think is like a fucking huge Warhammer nerd. So he'll probably be into this, but I just think this looks fun. I think I might actually play this when it comes out. And it comes out, do we have a release date? Yeah, May 23rd.
Yeah, I'm curious about this. This, I mean, for me, as I've said before, with it being a fast-paced first-person shooter, sounds like a PC game for me. But I love seeing this stuff alive still. I know that there's definitely some other indies that are doing some cool old school. I wish I could remember the name of the game. There's one that is basically all spell based. It's like a actual Doom version of that new game that's coming out, where instead it's of weapons and stuff, it's all spells and stuff like that. I'm gonna have to look that up, but yeah, it definitely seems cool. What about you, Chris?
Yeah, I love this. This is exactly the hand painted sprites that look kind of almost 3D, but they're also like animated in like a 2D way. Like everything about this looks so cool. Like visually, I'm in. I love this fast paced, old school boomer shooter energy. Like that's my exact style of game. Totally in. Like whatever this is. But I will say, yeah, it is a PC game for me. Like a game like this, where I feel like you just need that precision. You need that swiftness. I think it would just also feel a little bit more at home there, considering that's, just where these kinds of games really, really got their footing. Just strikes me that way. But I think it's just visually, it looks gorgeous. And that's like it's the easiest way to get me on board with anything. Is if something just looks really cool and it's just a treat to watch.
Yeah, it's interesting because in looking at it again, I don't know how to explain this really, but I think it's what you were touching on. It reads obviously like Doom, but the environments look like Borderlands in some way, like a reduced, like very lo-fi Borderlands. Like the environment doesn't remind me of the original Doom.
Yeah.
It's too high. It's too high fidelity.
What I would say is that the sprites, like your gun and your hands and the enemies are. They're very Doom reminiscent. They're very like kind of like not pixel art exactly, but like kind of like sprites, and they're handled like sprites. Even though they're like more meticulously painted, they're a little bit more detailed. They're animated in like that old sprite way. But the environment is more, I would say, like Quake or something, where it's like it's still low res, or not low res, but like low, like simplified fidelity,
low poly,
yeah. But it's still like really detailed, and it does exist in 3D. It's not like Doom where it's like they had to fake 3D. It looks awesome. Like I'm totally in.
Yeah, it looks great. It's on PS4 and PS5, May 23rd. Warhammer 40K Boltgun. If you want to check that out. I also thought I'd throw out this information here, which I was pleased to see, because I thought we were maybe out of the window when this would ever even happen. I don't know why they couldn't just make it happen to begin with. But Focus Entertainment, the publisher of A Plague Tale Requiem from Asobo, they noted that there's a 60 frames mode now on both PS5 and Xbox Series X. Additional graphics options for PC available as well. This is great news. Makes me more likely to play it. but it's a little late for most people that I think would play it. I don't know what took them so long. I still don't really quite understand why they couldn't have that going in the beginning. I know that the rat technology is very impressive and all of that, but it just, it just seems for a game like that, dude. I mean, we're talking about different sizes of teams, different engines, different money spent and all of that. But I'll just keep reiterating that when you see games like Horizon running at 60 frames a second, there simply just doesn't seem to be much of an excuse to me. And going back and playing some of the Horizon DLC last week, which I didn't get very far, but just playing around with it and fucking around with it, I was like, Jesus Christ, this game is beautiful.
Yeah, I kind of feel the same way. Where it's like I thought Plague Tale Requiem was great, but yeah, it's a bit late for something like this. Like I actually totally forgot that the game didn't have this mode in it, and then this reminded me, and I realized like, when did this game come out? It was like was it November of last year? Or am I crazy?
I don't know. Yeah,
it was. I remember it was kind of close to when there was award season because I remember it was a part of that conversation. But Colin, I gotta say, I don't
October
do this very often. I think that the Plague Tales are pretty Colin-ass games and low commitment too. Second one I think is maybe a hair bloated, a hair too long, but these are not super long games.
Yeah, for some reason, like when I bought a Plague Tale when it came out, the first one, and I played it for a little while. And I'm like, I wasn't feeling it, but I think I recognize in my mind more and more, let's say, that when a game's not snapping with me, I like to go back to it because I think of a game like Deathloop where I played it and I was like, well, I don't want to play this at all. And I just ignored it for like a year. And then when I finally went back to it, I'm like, what was I thinking? I have no idea what the fuck I was even thinking. This game's awesome. I love this game. So I try to be more open-minded with that sort of thing. And with that in mind, I think it could be a good time to get back to those games. I want to do a podcast, a Sacred Symbols Plus episode at some point where we earnestly recommend to each other games. Because I think we often talk about the flippancy of saying like, oh, you should watch this and you should. And I'm really trying to be mindful of that with people.
Oh, yeah.
But if you were to sit down someone you loved and cared about and you're like, I'm telling you that I think you really should try this. It would be fun to have that exercise with each other. And maybe we'll do that in the near future. But in the meantime, A Plague Tale Requiem, 60 frames, PS5, if you're curious. I was amped up about this and I showed it to Dagan. You guys wouldn't know anything about this, but Sunsoft is a developer that Dagan and I love and a publisher from back in the day, a Japanese publisher. They actually still exist. Their most famous game probably was Batman on NES, which is, have you guys played Batman on NES or seen it?
No.
I know that it's a popular one.
It's fucking awesome. It is so good. And of course they did Journey to Silius and a few other great games as well. Anyway, they did this game back in the day called Gimmick. And it was a Famicom game. It came out in 1992. It was a side scroller. It kind of was like Kirby a little bit. It looked kind of like Kirby. It was very cute, chibi characters like that. Mm-hmm. And it never came out here. It never came out in the West at all, actually. I think it came out in like some European territories. But anyway, Sunsoft announced that they're bringing it out in a Gimmick special edition that comes to PS4. And it comes out July 6th. And I just wanted to point it out if people want to go check out the trailer. This is an authentic, I don't want to say a lost NES game, but this is a port of an NES game that, I mean, we have no business of really getting. So in that sense, it is kind of just a lost game. And I love shit like that. So I wanted to point it out if people were interested in that. Go check out Gimmick, coming from Sunsoft, beloved Sunsoft, precious Sunsoft, in July. Over at Windows Central, run by our friend Jez Corden, people have been talking about this a little bit, and it seems like it's pretty conclusive with this information, but it looks like Mortal Kombat is going to have a reboot called Mortal Kombat 1. I don't know if you guys saw the ad. It's kind of cool because I think Mortal Kombat 11 was the last one, right? And then it was going to go to 12, but the clock basically just skips 12 and goes to 1. And so people had kind of been reading that about how it would be some sort of reboot. And so it seems like conclusively that this game is actually not only real, but that it might be coming soon by like the end of the summer, early fall to PS5. I don't know if there's going to be a PS4 version as well. I'm not a big Mortal Kombat guy, so at all. I don't like Mortal Kombat very much. Aesthetically, I don't think it's cool, in my opinion. But a lot of people do love it. I'm curious, Dustin, are you going to check out Mortal Kombat 1 or whatever it's called?
No, but I think that they're cool. I don't know. I'm somewhere in the middle, Colin, in that I like to go on YouTube and watch all the fatalities. And my friend Brandon loves these games. And so usually when there's a new one, he'll bring it over and we'll play it for a night or something like that. And so that's kind of the extent of what I want out of it. An interesting tweet that I wanted to share from today from Ed Boon at 1:06 p.m. He said, for the record, we never confirmed our next game is a Mortal Kombat game. Maybe he's just fucking with people because he has, he knows what's going on, but how could it not be Mortal Kombat? It's just such a strange thing to say unless they have two games that somehow this other one that also is not announced would come out first. But I don't know. Something to think about.
It says, we at Windows Central, this is a story on Windows Central, have confirmed through our sources that the information provided on Twitter is indeed legitimate. The post says the next Mortal Kombat from NetherRealm Studios and Warner Brothers Games will be called Mortal Kombat 1. It is scheduled to be released for Xbox Series X, Xbox Series S, PlayStation 5, Nintendo Switch, and PC. Our sourcing suggests the game will be revealed in full in the next couple of weeks. I would imagine that could be a PlayStation showcase game.
Yeah.
And maybe he was saying that because WBPR is being like, why are you guys talking when we're so close? I don't know. But Chris, are you interested in Mortal Kombat 1?
I'm interested in the sense that it reminds me of when DICE made a Battlefield 1.
Right.
And we all thought that was like a weird title, but Battlefield 1 was awesome, by the way.
Yeah, it was.
But
it was awesome.
Yeah, super, super cool. But yeah, I mean, I don't know. I'm kind of with you where like Mortal Kombat, of the big fighting, like tentpole fighting games, like it's for whatever reason it appealed the least to me, because I feel like there was a certain point where I feel like that was like the big thing where it was like, oh, it's so bloody and vicious or whatever. But by the time I was old enough to really appreciate that, I had played remarkably bloody games already, and so like that was just sort of lost on me. So all that was left was like the fighting, and I always just found it comparatively unsatisfying compared to like, I don't know, Street Fighter or Tekken or Smash Brother, and literally any other fighting game. But I do always find myself playing these games in some way, shape, or form. I find myself at friends' places playing them, at parties playing them. Like at some point, I will play this. Not of my own volition necessarily. I won't be in line day one, but I will eventually check this out.
So I have one other thing to say about this name too, Chris. So here's the thing, because Colin, you said about it being Mortal Kombat 1. So we have Mortal Kombat, and now Mortal Kombat 1. These are 3 different games from 3 different eras.
Yeah.
I said this in the Discord. Imagine this conversation. Someone says, man, I love Mortal Kombat 1. Someone says, oh, you mean the old Mortal Kombat? Just Mortal Kombat or Mortal Kombat 1?
Well, this is what Xbox One. Yeah, Xbox One is what happened too, because then that's where the term the original Xbox. It's like, so now you have to say the original Xbox.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, original Mortal Kombat, Mortal Kombat reboot, Mortal Kombat 1.
Yeah.
I guess that's what.
That's right.
But 1 is supposed to be, if this is a reboot, then that's also considered Mortal Kombat reboot.
Well, yeah, there's a Doom and then there's a Doom parentheses 2016. You know what I mean?
Sonic,
I don't like that. Yeah. I don't like that.
Sonic ruined it. It's got that feeling now.
Sonic killed it. Yeah. Well.
So, and you have to be very careful. You have to cut this out, Dustin, and I want you to cut out the following video and put it away after I'm. So make a timestamp. A source who's typically reliable told me that 3 people are in this game, and it's so unbelievable that I cannot even believe that it's true. So I'm just going to tape it here. We're going to cut it, and then I want you to just put it away, and then we'll put it in a show in the future if it's actually true. So I'm going to tell you guys now here on the show, but this can't make it in the show as it is. You understand? All right. So
Ben's listening to.
Yep.
I've got the notes. I already have to make other cuts, so we're good.
Yeah. So we're going to cut here. All right. So we're back. Okay, so we'll see if that ends up being true. If it is, we'll reveal what it was said. I only have it from one source, but it's from a reliable source that has told me things in the past. And I don't even understand what was just told to me, but okay.
Yeah.
Fair enough. All right.
Jesus Christ.
Speaking of fighting games, and Mortal Kombat, before we move on, I guess I'll say this. I loved the original Mortal Kombat and Mortal Kombat 2. You guys were too young to be there. You weren't there for the zeitgeist. It was one of those things where you kind of had to be there. You missed the arcade era, and I even really missed most of it. I was young, but
hey, I had a birthday party at an arcade.
Yeah, it's not the same.
2001.
It's not the same. Like that.
I played Lucky and Wild.
I dispute this, and I'm not saying this as an old fart because I'm saying I even missed that. Being born in '84, like I was really on the tail end, right, of like the pure arcade era, in my opinion. Like, which I think died in the mid or the early to mid 90s. But Mortal Kombat was one of those games that I remember very well. People just fucking being crazy about. And like Dagan has said it on Knockback, people used to have the nerds would be there. Your friend, you'd see these guys. They'd have like written down move lists and all this crazy stuff, and because a lot of it was secret, especially the finishers or whatever they would call them. So and I remember when Mortal Kombat came to SNES in 1993. I got it for my birthday that year, and I was over the moon. I was like, I can't believe I'm playing this. But as I got older, I just felt like it kind of, looking back at it, I'm like, it's kind of corny. And I'm not saying it as an insult because I know people love it, and I know people think some of the stuff I love is corny. But from my perspective, from my viewpoint, it's like it's just kind of like, ugh. The only shout out I want to give, Johnny Cage. Shout out to Johnny Cage. But like the Scorpion Sub-Zero thing, that's very 1993 to me, very 1992. It's very strange. And when I look at games like, that's what I was saying about Street Fighter 6, and we're going to talk about Street Fighter 6 next, where I'm like, this looks so vanilla. What happened to the anime weirdness, the global warriors, And speaking of Street Fighter 6, I wanted to let everyone know that there's an open beta coming. So if you missed out on the closed betas that were occurring, then you'll be pleased to know that from May 19th to May 21st, there will be an open beta for all. It will be the same content as the closed beta, but you can try it out for yourself as they continue to stress test and fix things up. And of course, we know that Street Fighter 6 comes out Friday, June 2nd. Anyone interested in this? Dustin?
I might check it out. I mean, why not? If it's a free open beta, don't have to sign up for anything, then I'll probably check it out. Realize for the millionth time that I am not good at fighting games and I don't understand them, but maybe have a greater appreciation. So yeah, why not?
I've seen so much. Speaking of funny videos, Chris, I don't know if you've seen the footage of people just fucking destroying each other in Street Fighter 6 on the streets. Like, guys, basically there's this, it's like an open world kind of, and you can challenge people to fights and you can like fuck with them. And so people just go around, but that since you can make your own character, people are doing it with the most hideous eldritch, like, I love that. Abominations.
That was the best thing about Soul Calibur, was that you could make these just absurd. I remember I had a Gumby character in like the one of the old Soul Caliburs where it was just this long green man, and I loved beating people up with him, like having my friends come over and just ravage them with Gumby. I'll check this out. Like my issue with fighting games isn't that I don't like them. My issue is that like if I get it on the ground floor, I know I'm getting the worst version of it. Like, because I could just wait a year or two for like the ultimate version or whatever with all the DLC characters or whatever, and that's probably like a better way to do it. I know friends who I have friends who are going to get this like when it comes out, and I'll probably just practice with their copy until I have like a reasonable desire to get my own. But I don't know, Street Fighter looks cool. I do think it looks a little bit like somewhat bland, but it does play really well, because I did play that demo that they had, and it plays really well. Cammy's in it.
Yeah, Cammy's awesome.
So that's all that really matters to me.
Yeah, she's something special.
Yeah.
All right. Finally, before we get into what we're playing, I wanted to go and talk about GQ's top 100 games list. I don't know if you guys saw this circulating to much contention. I want to say this before we begin. A lot of people are saying, this is what they want. Don't talk about it. I think that's such a cop out. We're supposed to talk about things that are happening. Yeah. They probably want to get people to read it and be crazy about it. Sure. I don't care. But I wanted to talk about it nonetheless. So the game, it's called, if you want to look it up, the 100 greatest video games of all time ranked by experts. And this list is bad. And I wanted to say that just because I don't know that you could really do this right.
No.
So I don't want to say that I could do it any better. People are saying, "Oh, Sacred Symbol on Discord. You guys should do one." I was fucking going off there a little bit about it. I'm like, I don't think we can do it any better at all. I think that the the methodology is flawed in the way they did it, in the sense that they only asked for 10 games from everyone. So you're going to get this crazy bias, not only in terms of AAA stuff, but also in recency. And I'll talk about that in a minute. But I hate shit like this, because first of all, some of our friends voted on this, so I'm not trying to insult everyone. But if you look at the people who voted on it, it's like ranked by experts. I'm like, I don't think so. I mean, a lot of these people are not experts. And for every Gene Park that voted on it, you have some other clown voting on it that has been playing games for 6 or 7 years. And I don't mean that as an insult, but it's hard for me to put this in the words. But even if there's nothing wrong with you of starting playing games recently, and there's nothing wrong with you being younger, and I'm just saying the royal you, it's just that you don't have the requisite view to make this list. And here's why I say that, is because if I could be wrong, but there are 2 video games from the 1980s on this list out of 102. There are 2 NES games on the list, 5 SNES games on the list, no Genesis games, no Master System games, 1 arcade game, no Atari 2600 game, something like even River Raid, you can imagine being in a discussion. That was a revolutionary game. Nothing like Asteroids, nothing like even so, it's just like, what is this? That's my only problem. It's not that they, like, I went through the list and I read it and I kind of thought about it. And I'm like, you can't make an argument about these games all not being, or pretty much all of them not being, excellent games. But it has no context. There is no universe where the top 100 video games of all time have only 2 NES games on it. Mario 1 and Mario 3. That's absurd. There is no universe where a top 100 video games list of all time doesn't have any Genesis games. In fact, if you look at the list, I don't think there are any Sega console games on it at all. That's impossible. There's no arcade game on it except for Street Fighter 2, which you could argue was really big on console for, after a prolonged period of time, although it was big obviously in the arcades, and that's where I played it too. I just look at a list like this and it just reminds you of how difficult it is to do, but how if you're going to do it, you have to have a holistic methodology that, in my opinion, asks everyone to submit 100 games. And only then, I think, can you, because people would say like, oh, the math would turn out the same, but I don't think it would. By including the games more on the lower end, if a person included a game that wasn't included, but it was in their top 10, then it will get buttressed by getting points from the bottom. And I think you would get a better list. But I just wanted to call that out. How can you, dude, someone pointed out that there was something like 16 games from 2018 or something like that. I was like, and that's what annoys me. They could have positioned it. It's not ranked by experts. Absolutely not. 100 greatest video games of all time. Absolutely not. 100 great games. Definitely. I don't know. Am I off base? Does this even matter? I'm sure it really doesn't matter, but it's something to talk about anyway.
I think it's worth filling in the audience what their actual methodology is. So in the article, it says each voter has 1 task. Pick a personally ranked top 10 list. In the first, a game in the first receives 10 points. A game in 10th receives 1 point. So in the sense of the methodology, Colin, I completely agree with you, because I think that's where it comes down to it, is that if you are asked to make a top 10 personal list, then a lot of games from arcade era or older era, I think, are going to be by the wayside, because there's a lot of those that would maybe be, I don't know, 12 or 14th or something. So I think that I totally agree that the methodology should include more than 10 games. And also, it comes down to the naming, right? Because you're asking 10 personally ranked games. I can give you a list of my top 10 personal favorite games, and I can give you a list of the top 10 most important or most significant or whatever type of games as well. Or like a mix of 2 that's a mix of importance and personal favorite. Those are 3 totally different lists. And so maybe the better name for the list is the 100 most beloved, but even then, that's not even totally right. I don't know really how you name it, but I agree that it's not necessarily the greatest video games, simply just in that the methodology is off.
Yeah. And it also doesn't help that, and this is just a pedantic, annoying thing for me, but the first game is Star Wars Knights of the Old Republic, a fine game to include, with the wrong date, because it came out in 2003, not 2004. Come on, get it together, GQ. But I was curious about what you thought of this, Chris, and if you had anything you wanted to add. I think I went on Discord just to look at what I was saying. I mean, because people might be curious, like, what games do I feel like are missing? I think a lot of games are missing, but even from just that particular generation, let's see, or those generations, I should say. So here are the games that I identified that are not on the list, like, and some of them you would expect, but think about it from some sort of objective point of view or from some historical point of view. Mega Man 2, Mega Man X, Castlevania, Castlevania 3, Ninja Gaiden, Kid Icarus, the original Zelda, Mario 2, Final Fantasy 4, Phantasy Star 4, Sonic 2, NHL 94. I mean, these are just some games that I would, if you were going to consider the greatest games of all time, I would think that 2/3 of that list would have to be on that, at least. There are no sports games on the list. That's weird. I know, like, you need to have, if you're going to make this proclamation, it needs to be more holistic. It's difficult. I know it's difficult because I've been on these we used to make these lists at IGN all the time. We made the top 100 NES games of all time, and that was a really hard thing to do. And ultimately, it is subjective. But I just feel like there's no, how can you look at a list like that and be like, yeah, this is about right. 2 NES games. Yeah, sure. Sure thing. I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. I think it's because I was looking through it, and my issue is that I don't know if I could argue against many of these. You know what I mean? Like, every time I see something on this list, I'm like, yeah, that belongs here. Maybe the placement is off, but like I do think like, oh yeah, this belongs here. This belongs here. So it's really just a matter of like. Look, the games industry is so old. There's so many games. Obviously, recency bias is going to come into big play with something like this because, like, you're going to be more impressed with Red Dead Redemption 2 in 2023 than you're going to be impressed by Mega Man 2. It's just how it is, you know. But Mega Man's absence is bizarre. I think Sonic's absence is bizarre as somebody who doesn't even like Sonic.
Right. I'm going to bat for Sonic too. Like, obviously that would be on the list, you know?
Yeah. I don't know. I'm conflicted about it. Because I don't know if you could really make this list. It's like a fruitless, you can't do this list and make anybody happy, really.
Yeah, it's true.
Yeah, it's not possible. And so I ultimately think I look at lists like this as like more of like a fun exercise than anything, because like I said, I don't know if I can argue against any of these. Like, these all belong in everything on this list. I would argue belongs in some kind of pantheon,
except for Firewatch.
Yeah,
I was trying to find what the worst game on the list is.
Is that on the list?
Yeah, it is.
Oh yeah. No. Fire. No.
No, I don't think so. Firewatch
that's crazy.
Firewatch starts great, and I don't think ends up great at all. But
what's the one before Firewatch? Firewatch is not better than Fortnite. I'm sorry. Like, I don't even like Fortnite. But like,
Fortnite's on the list, and you can make arguments that, like you said, I get it. But here's what I want to say to you guys.
Yeah, I don't think you can make an argument for this at all.
And this is it's difficult to say this but I think it's true. Or it's difficult to kind of verbalize it. You have to either be a true... Well, let me back up and say first, this list doesn't matter. It doesn't matter what these lists are. None of the lists that are made or matter. The lists I've made don't matter. It's like, whatever. They're just all exercises. But with that said, I really think that it's kind of absurd to take like a 20-something-year-old and ask them for the best, greatest games of all time. And you could make the argument that I'm not old enough either to really have a view of it. I guess what I'm saying is that I would be curious to know how this would go with people who really, really understand video games. And I look at the list of people that they talk to, and I would say only some of them really know. You could probably I don't know some of the people, but just seeing some of the names, it's like, there's no way, and I would love to see like a more professional list from people who know a lot about video games. Like really, really, really know games.
But I don't know. Like who could you get like some 50-year-old? Like they're
isn't it weird? It's weird to me that a Jeff Gerstmann wouldn't be in this, right? Like it's like where's a guy like that?
Yeah.
And now let me see here.
There
like
is
Jeremy Parish isn't in this, right? It's like there are just people I'm thinking off the top of my head that like people like Jeff Gerstmann and Jeremy Parish arguably know more about video games than almost anyone I've ever met, right? Do you think they would be obvious choices to include? And as an example, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, this goes back to that the methodology is wrong anyway, Colin, because it's who cares about people's personal lists? Like, it doesn't matter how much someone knows about games. It's still their personal list, which you could hate every single one of them. So I think that just goes back to the methodology being wrong of GQ. If you want to have maybe a different way to do a list would to have a council of, I would argue that you wouldn't just want the most knowledgeable people, but a wide range of ages, genders, ideologies, all that kind of stuff work together. That's not just a personal list, but a trying to be more objective. That would garner much greater results.
Yeah, more open-mindedness. Like for me, I agree with you where if I was just like, you're thinking about the greatest video games of all time, it's like Pong. Certainly got to be on that list.
Pong is that's kind of the thing.
Space
it's like
War.
We get into a conversation about like the greatest versus the most impactful or the most important, which I think are two separate things.
Or the best.
You know what I mean? Like,
what they're doing is almost like the best games of all time, which is like it's cool, but that at least embraces the subjectivity.
Exactly. Yeah. I don't know. It's. I gotta say,
it doesn't really matter. I question why I even care.
I am happy to see Tetris at number 3 or so high up, because Tetris is, I think, arguably number 1 to me. Like, I don't think there is a better video game than Tetris. Tetris is perfect.
Yeah, I love Tetris too.
Yeah,
and that's what I'm saying. Like, that's an objective. I think that's an objective view in some way of looking at Tetris, the same way you might look at a Pong, or the same way you might look at like a Space Invaders or something. And that's why I was really aghast at just the total lack of arcade games and the total context of that missing. But
there's no Miss Pac-Man or anything. It's nuts.
But I think what, I don't know, in some sense, it's like, it doesn't matter, of course, but it also is, people have to ask themselves, well, why do they even like this show? It's because there's some authority. I mean, you don't listen to people just talking out of their ass, and you definitely don't take all of that and do some mathematical stuff to it to put it into a list. And I guess that's what I feel like. And actually, since Gene participated, and I looked at Gene's list, and Gene's list is pretty good, because a lot of people were sharing their top 10 lists, like how they voted. And I'd be interested to know like how he feels about the methodology and all of that as well, and how it could be better. And I really do think that by just forcing more people to just, it could be the same group of people, but making them answer with literally 100 games, I think would be much more fun. And you'll get different answers if you do that. Much different answers. Okay. That's it for the news, for the small pieces of news. We'll get into the bigger pieces of news shortly. But before we do that, let's get into what we're playing. Let me take a look here. Chris, I actually want to start with you. A lot of people wrote in about this. And so let's hear about Star Wars Jedi Survivor.
Yeah. So I'm playing Star Wars Jedi : Survivor, which I forgot that was like, for some reason I thought it so this is the Star Wars Jedi series. Right, exactly. That's what it is. It's weird. Right. There's something about that that's bizarre.
Not Jedi Knight though. Don't get that confused. The GOAT Jedi Knight.
Right. So yeah, I'm playing through this. It's good. It is very good. Like, I'm actually like weirdly charmed by it. In a way that I don't really recall ever being charmed by Star Wars before. There's like a lot of endearing characters, and I think the first one had a similar kind of vibe to it, but it is better now. The combat feels a little bit more responsive. It feels a little bit more varied. Although I do feel like it's a little bit. It feels a little bit more restrictive because you have to select your stances now, or you have to equip stances. There's in the first game you had 3, and you could kind of freely alternate between them, but now you have more, but you can only alternate between 2 at once.
It's like a Neo thing.
Yeah, I mean, it's not horrible. It's not really bad either. It's just like a different way of doing it. I think it works. It is very good. It's just it runs very questionably.
No, it's
not
fine.
as bad as I.
It's fine,
not
Chris. It's fine.
I will say, I have to say, it's not as bad as I thought. Like hearing about it, maybe okay. They did patch it. I don't know. I'm playing on the Series X. I'm working on it. It's I don't know. There are some hiccups, but I in playing it, I do understand why people kind of like overlooked it, because it is somewhat sparse, and whatever interruptions do happen infrequently and in places where it's not like Elden Ring, where like I'll be in the middle of combat and it'll freeze frame. You know what I mean? It'll usually happen when you're entering a new area. If it ever happens, I wouldn't say it's like a majority of my time or anything, but it's something I do notice. I also understand why it didn't necessarily dock a lot of points from a lot of people's reviews. It is, however, just kind of more of what came before. And that's in some ways a good thing. In some ways, it's kind of a little bit underwhelming. There is some weird life sim aspect to it. There's like a room that you can kind of customize. There's like a garden aspect to it. I don't care about any of that. I don't play Animal Crossing at all, or Harvest Moon at all, or Stardew Valley at all. I don't care about these like weird little kind of slice of life thing, these kind of slice of life mechanics that, I mean, even in Hogwarts Legacy, you saw a lot of that too, where it's like, oh, here's your room and your dorm, and you know, that's cool though. And I recognize that there's a lot of value, especially for people who are like really, really into Star Wars, to kind of like have this weird place in the universe in some way. It's cool. It's a solid game. I think I'm about 3 hours in. There's a lot of like really cool characters in there. There's this one specific frog looking guy.
I've seen this frog.
Yeah, this guy. He's voiced by the guy who does Invader Zim, Richard Horvitz. He's done a bunch of other stuff. Raz from Psychonauts and stuff. His name's Turgle, and he's awesome. He's just this frantic, perpetually anxious frog, and you'd think that would be like, I don't know, there's something like Marvel-esque about it, but it's almost like it's too endearing to be annoying. So I don't know. I'm enjoying these. I'm enjoying the world of Star Wars Jedi Survivor a lot more than I anticipated, simply because I'm just not a Star Wars guy. The last game kind of worked for me on that level, but this game's doing a lot more on it. The plot is kind of all over the place, but I do think it's one of these games that you're playing more for the combat, more for the encounters, and also just more for the character interaction than you are necessarily about like the greater implications of like, what does this mean for the Jedi? Like I don't give a shit. I've never cared in my life about the Jedi in any way, shape, or form. But that's
a funny thing to say.
It's a compliment, sincerely, like, because I don't care about this world at all, really, and I'm still endeared to it. I am enjoying it. It's a fun combat model. I don't feel like it's as hard as the last one, though. I don't know if that's just me getting better, or if the game itself is just kind of better at what it's trying to do than it was.
I remember the first one being hard, like almost too hard at times. Like, why is this so hard?
I was trying to get through, like, because I had like 1 hour to go on Jedi Fallen Order, and so I decided to finish it, and I was in this boss fight, and I was just like, this doesn't even feel fun, challenging. It's just annoying, and I dropped it to story for that fight, and then just like kept going, because I was just like, I'm not enjoying myself, and I don't care. But this game I've been playing on the default Jedi Knight difficulty, I think, and it's solid. Like, I'm not really running into any situations that I feel like I'm like too underleveled for, like I can't handle. It feels like parrying is a little bit more consistent and precise, because that was something in the first game that I felt was like a little off. Like I could never get the parry window right. It was, or it never really felt consistent to me. But it's super cool. I would recommend, though, if you're like a performance snob, I would recommend waiting for some kind of patch. Although if you did decide to jump into it and throw caution to the wind, I don't know if it's not horrendous. It's not. It doesn't get in the way of the game too much, which is shocking to me. Because there is a performance mode, actually, unlike apparently fucking Plague Tale until now. So
right.
you've got that option with you.
It is annoying to me just from the outside of how casually publishers. I don't really blame the developers. It is the developers making the games, but publishers are putting the games out. Publishers have a timeline, and a lot of developers would tell you games they would almost never release a game because it was, and which is good. Publishers push them to the finish line, but something would never be good enough. But it's very casual how they just release games and they're broken. Yeah. And it can't be overstated that this is run amok. Listen, I don't want to mix things up and act like game development has stayed static over all these years, because it hasn't. Games are much more complicated and much more technical and much more sophisticated and expensive than they've ever been in the patching era. But you simply could not release games like this back in the day.
No.
Because
they would die.
It would be over for you. And you would want there to be like some sort of audit system or something. You would think Valve would be the ones to do this first. Would it be to like, we're going to track somehow with math and whatever, we're going to track performance of these various games and how you patch them, and then kind of audit you and make some sort of ranking based on how well you treat your customers when a game comes out. Like, how many patches? Let me give you an example. We love you, Head, over there at Techland. We love our friends at Techland, but I went and I downloaded Dying Light 2 this week, but I didn't play it because I went on PSN profiles and the trophies are still broken. How can that be? That's
insane.
And they're just breaking different ones as time goes on, right? Like, and then they're fixing this one, and then this one breaks, and I look at that and I'm like, I want to play your game. I bought it the day it came out. It's like over a year ago or something like that. And I know people are like, why do you care? Why don't you just play? But I'm like, that's what I care about. I care about that too. And it should work. It should work. And there should be some sort of, I don't want to say penalty, but people should know. Like, it would be interesting if a company, it would be interesting if like a group or whatever really just tracked this stuff for the consumer. Like a Better Business Bureau type thing, but for publishers and developers, where it's like, these guys do this over and over again. These publishers try to do it over and over again, to the point where you have to be delusional to think that they don't know that the game's broken. They fucking know. They know better than anyone that the game's broken.
Yeah. So
they just put it out there anyway, and you simply couldn't get away with that. We always joke around about Metroid Other M being broken and how Nintendo had to patch it by getting SD cards sent to them and fixing people's saves.
Yeah.
That's why
it'd be like putting on a movie with it where like half the effects are not done, and there's like 3 shots that are just entirely green screen.
Remember, Chris, we were laughing when Cats came out because Cats got patched.
Yeah. They patched the buttholes out of cats.
Yeah.
It was I don't know, man. It should be noted too, like the game that I played before Star Wars Jedi Survivor was Redfall. So maybe I'm just a little bit more forgiving. Because Redfall I actually played on PC and it ran perfectly. It didn't crash at all, high resolution, 60 frames per second. But it was terrible. And this game like chugs every now and again, but at least there's like a competent, like genuinely good game there. So I don't know. It's frustrating that things like this keep happening. And we actually talked about this on the Colin show a little bit.
Oh, good. Well, yeah, I'll leave it to you guys there for that. But that's Star Wars Jedi Survivor. Chris, thank you for your thoughts. Dustin, let's hear from you.
Yeah. So I talked a lot last week about Metal Gear Solid 4 Guns of the Patriots and how I was almost done. I have completed the game now. And I initially put out a tweet that I mentioned that I was mixed on it, but I thought that I loved it. And now I really don't know. This is a really weird, conflicting feeling. And I know that I got some heat last week just from saying what I believe are some of the faults with the game and how when you have 3 games before it, there's a lot of characters and situations and different mysteries. And you know what? Sometimes it's better to just let the mystery be. To quote that one opening from The Leftovers Season 2. It's better to let the mystery be. And Kojima, I know that there was a situation where people were demanding this game. They demanded a conclusion to what he had set up, particularly in Metal Gear Solid 1 and 2. And I saw some people on YouTube. I like to, after I've had some time to think on things, see what other people's analysis is. And I think the one I watched that really was impactful was from Super Bunny Hop. He did a breakdown of the game. And one thing that I found really particularly thought-provoking was that he argues that Kojima didn't really want to make this game. And that's really interesting. And I can kind of, there was always rumors, or Kojima's like, this is my last Metal Gear game. This is my last Metal Gear game. And I believe there were reports that before Metal Gear Solid 4, there were death threats sent to Kojima Productions about making this game. And so he really went balls to the wall to answer everything to its own detriment in some ways, where I just don't know. To me, it's like this maximal Metal Gear story. And we talked a lot about the gameplay last week, so I don't need to go over that again, but it's just a really strange game in this mix. And then, of course, Metal Gear Solid 5, also a really strange game, but for completely different reasons. It's almost like there's too much story in Metal Gear Solid 4, and the gameplay is kind of eh. And then Metal Gear Solid 5 is all gameplay, and then they screwed up the story. So in a totally different way by not saying enough.
Yeah.
So
you got
I don't
heat.
know.
You got heat from what you were saying about Metal Gear Solid 4?
Metal Gear, a lot of Metal Gear fans love this game. They love from what I can gather, is just how it explains everything.
Yeah, it's
There's
great,
parts
isn't
of
it?
this game where they just basically like vomit lore for 30 minutes at a time of talking about deep, intricate details about the origins of the Patriots. And there's diagrams and shit going on. And I like that to some extent, but it's a different analogy, but I think it's fitting that Hitchcock had this quote or this saying about how the scariest thing in horror movies is the things you don't see, the things that you create in your mind. And I think that can be applied to mysteries too, is that
100%.
Sometimes, maybe it was better to not know the full origins of the Patriots. I don't know that. There's a lot in this game. I'm marinating on it.
Yeah. I'll take some of the heat off you. I think Metal Gear Solid 4 sucks.
Oh.
I think Metal Gear Solid 4 is fucking terrible. And there you go.
I wouldn't say that, because there's a lot of things I really like. I love Old Snake. I think this concept of Old Snake, this, he's fighting against this impossible odds. I love how dire the situation is.
It's so depressing watching it. It's just like,
it's so depressing. I love that.
It's so horrible to listen to. Like the whole game, Solid Snake is just choking. It's just like, it's horrible. It's like, I don't know, man.
I love that Kojima. People were so mad at Metal Gear Solid 2 that you didn't play as Snake for most of the game. And then 3, you play, of course, as Big Boss, which is, I don't know, obviously kind of in that vein. And then you get to play as Solid Snake again. And they're like, yeah, fuck you. He's old. He's not who you remember. And I kind of like that. I don't know. I love Snake has this sense of duty. There's multiple times where he says, we got to finish. This was our conflict and we have to finish it. And I love that aspect. But
yeah.
Anyway, let me know why I'm wrong about Metal Gear. I'm perfectly happy to hear it, legitimately. But here's something that's maybe even more spicy. I've started Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker. I don't get it, guys. I don't get it. I see a lot of people saying this is also one of their favorites, but of course that applies to every Metal Gear. Someone thinks it's the best one. Metal Gear Solid Peace Walker was a PSP game. It takes place after Metal Gear Solid 3 with the big boss and start and outer heaven and stuff like that. It's a cool game, and I feel like in particular, if you play this game in the context of playing it on PSP, this is a pretty solid Metal Gear experience for that hardware. And playing it, I'm playing the HD collection on my Series X because that's the easiest way to do it. It looks fine, whatever. I don't know. I'm just not really into this game. I understand that there's definitely the seeds of Metal Gear Solid 5 with the Fulton system where you're collecting soldiers and sending stuff back to base. I think that element is neat, but and maybe my perspective would be different if I had played Peace Walker and then Metal Gear Solid 5, but I don't know. This game isn't really doing it for me. I feel compelled, like I have to finish it because it's the last mainline Metal Gear Solid game that I've not completed. So I feel like an obligation so then I can have this completion of playing all of the main story Metal Gear Solid games. But I don't know. I'm almost done. I think I'm at the very end of chapter 2. I believe there's 5 chapters, but it's going to be tough to come back to this one with Tears of the Kingdom coming out this weekend. I feel like I said obligated to finish it, but it's probably my Metal Gear replay is going to be on a halt because as of tomorrow, the whirlwind of releases, at least for my particular tastes, just kicks off for literally months. So, but yeah, Peace Walker, not sure about it yet.
Fair enough. All right. Old Snake. Old Chris.
Old Chris.
There's going to be an old Chris in the future.
I'm going to age rapidly. I'm going to age rapidly from in between. By the next episode, I will be 76. And you'll see how much you like that.
You'll be like, ugh.
Yeah, see how not off-put you'll be by that.
All right, for me, I'm actually doing a bit of gaming this past week.
Yeah.
So first of all, I platinumed Dead Island 2. That's my 140th platinum trophy. And I don't have too much more to say about this game other than that it is the fun skeleton of the baseline expectation of a $70 AAA game. That's the best way I could describe it. I think it's a perfect way of describing it. If you were to spend $70 on a AAA, in this case, kind of open world first person action game, you would probably be satisfied, but you're not going to be blown away and impressed. And in fact, I think it behooves you to wait for this game to be cheaper, which I assume it will be. Although it's selling pretty well. We reported a couple weeks ago that it sold more than 1 million copies. So that's not too bad for a Dead Island 2 that was in development hell and that has a horrible reputation. It definitely is a lot better than you would have assumed. Dustin, you have something to say?
I got to point out, Colin, think back to 6 months ago, maybe even less than that this game would not only be as solid it is from a technical perspective, but also just a solid game in general. Like if you had put a versus, which one will be better, Redfall or Dead Island 2? No one's taken that bet. So I think they deserve a lot of credit for releasing this game in a stable condition and in a game that people are really enjoying for what it is.
It is incredibly stable, 60 frames. It's pretty. I forgot to mention this last week. The first game, and I've discussed this before, so I'm sorry for being redundant, but Killzone 2 was the first game I played where someone pointed out to me, have you ever looked at the perspective of where your character is looking? And it was my friend Mark Ryan Silly at IGN. And what we figured out was that the camera was in your waist in that game, not in your head. And it drove us insane. Because if you like walked up to counters, you would be like, the counter would be like right here. Didn't make any sense. And there's a similar scale situation and I don't know, like perspective situation in games like this that I just wish they would get better. We were making fun of Redfall for that, but I didn't play Redfall, so I can't really do that from a primary sourced perspective, but I can do that here. We got to work more on the perspective of how things line up with you in the world so that you don't come off as being like 4'10". You know what I mean? And I think that the answer is probably like, you shouldn't care. That's where the camera feels the best in the game. And I'm like, yeah, that's fine. But I just notice little things like that. But I liked Dead Island 2's lampooning of LA. I feel like it resonated with me a lot because I lived there for a few years. So I got it, especially in Santa Monica. I'll reiterate that the Venice Santa Monica pier part of the game, which is kind of like the second half of the game, is scary how accurate it is. Like I was literally walking around and I'm like, I know exactly where all this is, like exactly where you're placing, where everything is placed. There's a literal hot dog stand And I'm like, I know exactly what this hot dog stand is. It's hot dog on a stick. And it's just so interesting. And it's a little melancholy because that was probably the worst era of my life, was living in LA from a personal, like emotional point of view. And I kind of just up and left. And it's my first time back. And I really feel like I returned. Like, I really feel like I was kind of there, and it tickled something in me that was interesting. So you guys might feel the same if you're from LA or lived there and know what that's all about. So I wanted to point that out. Dead Island 2, 140th Platinum Trophy, fun game. Shout out to Dan Buster. Exceeded expectations. Then on Chris's recommendation, I went and played Dead Cells, and I just bought all the DLC. There's like a bunch of DLC, so I spent like $20 or whatever.
Oh, geez. Yeah.
And I just bought it all because there's one package that just puts them all together, and then there's the Castlevania one, and then there's, I think, one other one. So I just bought them, and I just erased. I had a save in the cloud, but I just got rid of it, and I just started from the beginning. And so you have to kind of work your way up to. I'm actually not even entirely sure how to consistently get to Castlevania. I'm just kind of playing the game, you know?
Yeah, because you kind of find it,
right?
That's what you find, the staircase that brings you to the outskirts, I think.
Right. That's what I was like. So I was going to say, for people that aren't familiar with Dead Cells, it's a 2D side-scrolling Metroidvania style game, but it's a roguelike. It constantly changes, and you find doors to new areas, and you kind of get deeper and deeper into the game. And when you die, you get brought to the beginning, back to the beginning, and do it again. So you're kind of finding random combinations. It seems like it goes in some direction, but you find some random combinations, and then you go back and you upgrade your characters. You have souls. Or cells, as they're called in the game, and you use them to upgrade. So it's got that vibe. The Castlevania stuff's really cool from what I saw. I died, and then I lost my way, and then I got back there again, and then I died again. But I saw a couple of the stages. It was cool to see. Well, it's a spoiler. I won't say what I saw, but
the music's
beautiful. The graphics are beautiful. It makes me really want Motion Twin to do a Castlevania game. But what it makes me want even more is for Konami to do a real Castlevania game with the proper pixel aesthetic, because this aesthetic works, but it's very stylized, and Castlevania is not really stylized. It's gothic and like very severe, you know. And so man, we got to get more Castlevania. And I saw people circulating these videos of Lords of Shadow, which I think is on like Xbox Game Pass or something, and I'm like, man, it's a fucking shame that. Why did you do that? Like, where are you guys? And the rumors are. And I don't think I included it here because I don't really know. I don't know. Well, we're going to talk about we don't know when that fucking show is going to happen. I'm saying the F word more than usual today. I'm sorry. We don't know when that live show, you know, the next phase of PlayStation, all that is going to happen. But there are rumors that Castlevania might be there. And that would be a shitting of Colin's pants moment if we got a new proper AAA Castlevania game. I mean, that would be, it's time. I mean, it's just time. I would love to have a 2D game. I would love to have a Symphony of the Night style game, but we know that's not going to happen. So the best we can hope for is for them to go all in, I think. And I'm excited about that. So Dead Cells is cool. I've been messing with it just generally. I think I'll keep playing it in the background because there's another game that I started playing. I was bored. I beat Dead Island 2. I beat Dead Island 2. I downloaded Dying Light 2 thinking surely we have come to the point where this is safe to play. So I just downloaded on the assumption. I go on PSN profiles. I read the extensive trophy thoughts thread, which is awesome. People are always updating like with their thoughts and what's going on and things they're missing and things that are glitched and all that. And they're like, no, this shit's still broken. Like people saying like I deleted it off my console. I downloaded the new package. I started a new save and missed this trophy. And it's like, no. So I had to dig pretty deep. I was thinking about going back to Metro Exodus, which I started but never finished. I'm like, I'll get back to that at some point. But
that's one that I was thinking about too.
Yeah,
recently.
Great on PS5, I've heard too.
Yeah, that's right. That's where I have it. And it was. I just got distracted, and I would need to restart it. But that's totally fine. What happened?
No, it's just like because I'm remembering why I stopped playing Metro Exodus, and it's the audio balancing for conversations was so weird, and it bothered the hell out of me. Like no character felt like if there was a crowd of characters talking, and it was supposed to be like a commotion scene, you'd hear everybody clearly, and it was just it felt like schizophrenia or something, where like there's a main character that you're clearly supposed to be listening to, but they're not prioritizing the mix at all. I don't think they ever fix that because I don't think they view it as a problem. Maybe in Russia they don't care.
Yeah, they're screaming at each other.
It's wild. It's a great game though. Like,
yeah, it is.
I remember.
I platinum Metro 2033. I platinum Metro last night. I love those games, and I just never got around to Metro Exodus. So, actually, as I recall, it was my frustration around Metro Exodus when that game came out that was like that. Chris and I decided we were never going to work with PR again. I'm pretty sure it was Metro Exodus that finally was like, no more. We're done.
Was it?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
I remember
original release. Do you remember, Dustin?
Yeah. Well, the part of the details was I had asked you about it if you were playing it because my old site got it. And then you were like, wait, you're like, it was a clear indication that it was specifically not sent to you and Chris at the time. And that was the catalyst.
Yeah. So I think that was, and what was that, 2018, something like that, 2019, something like that. So that was when we were just like, no more. Because some publishers still talk to me and send me games like Koei Tecmo, Bandai Namco, Square Enix. These companies would all be happy to work with us. I just don't want to. I like people that work there. I like some of the PR people. I'm friends with them, but no, it's not for us anymore. But but speaking of Square Enix, I downloaded Forspoken, and I went and I've been curious about this game. It's not so secret. It's that I don't believe this game is as bad as people are portraying it, or at least I didn't, right? And I haven't played, so unfortunately I'm not going to be able to like rectify this feeling right now because I played only like the first chapter, which is really not playing. You're getting through, what do they call it, an isekai, right?
Isekai.
Yeah. So like you're going to another world. I'm sorry.
People that debate about that. There was a debate in our Discord about what the term isekai means. So tread lightly because the weebs will make sure it's very clear what is and isn't. But I think that this does count.
Yeah,
I don't know. I don't want to get attacked.
To another world style thing.
Yeah.
So I didn't know much about the game and what it's about, and I don't think it's a spoiler to say that the girl Frey Holland is an orphan and kind of like a deadbeat in some way, but she's like committing crimes, but really she's working on behalf of these other people that are threatening her, and she kind of wants to escape, and she ends up escaping to this other world. And at that point I stopped playing. So I basically did all of the real world stuff, which is probably about an hour and it's mostly just conversations and exploring stuff and getting to know her. And I think I can see this being charming. I don't know, man. I mean, I know we were making fun of it. I haven't seen enough of it. I haven't gotten really into the core gameplay, which I imagine is the smallest, if even relevant problem to the game. I'm sure the game's probably really fun just based on the way it looked, but I feel like this is one of those games that needs to be part of my repertoire because it is a PlayStation console exclusive from a publisher I really like. I should probably familiarize myself with it in some way. I was surprised that they were still charging $70 for it, but I was like, whatever. And that DLC is coming out in Tanto We Trust or whatever. So I'll probably be playing that if I'm still playing the games at the same time, but that's kind of what I'm moving on to. So I'll have more thoughts about it, but I'll say that right now, the game isn't as bad as people are making out to be. But I will say that it's not a very good looking game. It's actually pretty shocking how last gen it looks. It doesn't look like a PS5 game at all. At least not yet. Maybe the power under the hood is used for the kinetic gameplay and all of that, but I will say that it's not a good looker. I am in performance mode, so I'm not, I should maybe switch it back and forth and see, but it definitely doesn't look great, but that doesn't matter a super amount to me. I would like it to look good, but needless to say, I'll have more to say about Forspoken. I've breached the wall. Frey Holland. Chris, do you know why Holland is her last name? This is going to fucking drive you insane.
No.
It's because she was abandoned at the Holland Tunnel.
That's not real.
No, it is. Her name is. So they find her. And this is literally the beginning of the game. So I'm sorry if people feel like this spoils. It's just the beginning of the game. They explain that they find her as an orphan wrapped in a blanket that says Frey on it, and it's at the Holland Tunnel.
You've got to be fucking kidding me.
Yeah.
Is that real?
Yeah. So her name is Frey Holland because of that.
Okay. Okay. I mean, whatever they need.
You want to get nuts?
Let's get nuts.
All right. Shout out to Luminous and RIP.
Oh my god.
Yeah.
All right.
That's an interesting one. Interesting choice. All right, my friends, let's get into the bigger pieces of news. There are, what do I have here? 5 pieces of news that we have to get through. And one of these items happened right after we recorded last week. So it's a little bit late, but I think it's a really important piece of news to get into nonetheless. Surprising piece of news, but let's contextualize it. Okay, number 1. In a surprising piece of news, PlayStation has opted to shutter one of its first-party studios. An especially unusual step in a successful, profitable, and critically acclaimed period in PlayStation's history. But it may be the last thing that's the sticking point. The team in question is Pixelopus, a small studio located within the confines of PlayStation's Northern California HQ, and the announcement of their closure came rather unceremoniously via the dev's social media feeds, and later confirmed via a brief comment from Sony PR, a rarity in and of itself these days. Pixelopus' message in its entirety was, quote, "Dear friends, our Pixelopus adventure has come to an end. As we look to new futures, we wanted to say a heartfelt thank you to the millions of passionate players who have supported us and our mission to make beautiful, imaginative games with heart. We are so grateful," end quote. As noted, Sony PR followed up with the following sent to various media outlets, quote, "PlayStation Studios regularly evaluates its portfolio and the status of studio projects to ensure they meet the organization's short and long-term strategic objectives. As part of this recent review process, it has been decided that Pixelopus will close on June 2nd, end quote. Typical ice cold Sony. Can't even say thank you or like we wish them the best or whatever. Now, it's hard to gauge what Pixelopus's headcount was upon closing, and it's impossible to even get an idea as Pixelopus's LinkedIn presence has been deleted. And with some of ex-employees now reading as working at PlayStation, it indicates that some of the talent may have been retained. But we can assume it contains Sony's first party's smallest staff. What we do know is that the studio was formed over 2013 and 2014 with fewer than a dozen employees and led by a man named Dominic Robillard, a Sony London veteran who got his start in the industry working as a designer on the PS2 first-party game, The Getaway. The team, with deep academic roots in Carnegie Mellon and San Jose State University, where Sony recruited the members, released their first game, Entwined, in 2014. Indeed, you may recall that Entwined was a PS3, PS4, and Vita rhythm game that was announced at E3 that year and then immediately launched on the PSN. It was followed up with the far more ambitious and impressive action-adventure game Concrete Genie, which launched some 5 years later in 2019 on PlayStation 4. What Pixelopus was specifically working on since is unknown, but we do know that it was on a collaborative project with Sony Pictures Animation Division, the keepers of franchises like Surf's Up, Open Season, and perhaps most interestingly, the synergistic 2018 Spider-Man film Into the Spider-Verse. This information was garnered from Pixelopus' own job listings over the years. We also know, based on LinkedIn information, that the game was for PlayStation 5. Assuming it went into production in 2020 or even 2021 if you want to be generous, it's clear Sony decided to pull the plug mid-development on whatever was being made, likely after failing a crucial internal milestone of some sort. Pixelopus marks Sony's 9th first-party studio closure since the brand was founded in the early 90s. Sony closed Twisted Metal Studio Incognito in 2009, PSP-centric Big Big Studios, SOCOM Team Zipper, and their first ever first-party team Studio Liverpool in 2012, MotorStorm and Drive Club Studio Evolution in 2016, Riggs and Killzone Mercenary Studio Gorilla Cambridge, previously Cambridge Studio, in 2017, the mysterious Manchester Studio in 2020, which never so much as made a game, and finally, the biggest of them all, Japan Studio, which was shuttered in 2021. It could be argued that outside of Manchester, Pixelopus' closure is thus the least consequential studio collapse in PlayStation history. Dimitri Edwards wrote into us, said, "Hello, boys. Does Sony's closing on Pixelopus seem odd to you all? It feels like teams that don't do the third-person action genre mold they've been known for are DOA if they try to do anything different." I don't know, man. Again, I don't want to sound defensive of PlayStation. It's never good to have these studios shut down. It's a little confusing why you would shut down any of your studios at a time when retention is so important. But I frankly feel like that says something about the studio's quality and the project they were working on. If Sony was willing to if Sony's willing to take it on the chin and say, like, you're done, so now we have to deal with this this whole thing. We're going to have to release PR statements and people are going to think that we're in trouble in some way. Then the game that they were working on is probably in bad shape. And for people, and I'll give people a little bit of insight into how this works, especially at bigger publishers and bigger developers, is that you have milestones to reach, right? And you have to kind of pass these milestones. And there are certain things that are set up for you. The game has to be here. It needs to do this. We need to have it this. And, you know, like a bunch of check marks. And if you fail some of them, then your game is basically put into review. Sometimes your game then continues and gets new milestones. Sometimes your game is removed. And when games are canceled years into development like this, it's usually because of a catastrophic failure of milestones. Or the game's quality is just not up to snuff. And it's, as we said earlier, with that game coming from the third person sci-fi action and adventure game, I don't know what the fuck they were talking about, or an FPS, whatever it is, I don't know, that we were talking about earlier being canceled. It's like, well, that sucks, but it was never announced, and it might be a good sign that Sony's simply not willing to release games that are not up to snuff. I think that's kind of a good sign. Does Pixelopus... Entwined wasn't a very good game. I reviewed it at IGN. You can go check out my review. It was fine. But Concrete Genie, which I platinumed, was also fine. To me, it didn't shout modern day PlayStation because it wasn't a third person over the shoulder shooter. It didn't scream PlayStation because it wasn't a 9. You know, like that's kind of, I think, what they're aiming for. And so while the potential of them working on an animated project with Sony Pictures is really exciting, and potentially maybe it could have been a Spider-Man game or something else, I don't know that I'm like really lamenting this. It's not like losing Sucker Punch. It's not like losing Gorilla. And like I said, Japan Studios closure, which they would argue wasn't a closure, but it obviously was much more catastrophic to the brand than this. So, Dustin, I'm curious, what do you think about Pixelopus's exit from the scene?
We've seen a shift in Sony, and I'm glad you mentioned Studio Japan, where they've kind of gone by the wayside as well, where Sony, I don't think... Sony's not interested in good small games that don't sell. You know, that era of the smaller Sony game is gone.
Yeah, like Journey.
Right. Stuff like that. Or even remaking a game like Medieval, or making a game like Everybody's Golf, stuff like that. That Sony is gone.
Yeah, Gravity Rush is a good example of that too.
Yeah, Gravity Rush is, these are all great examples of that type of game that they were once in the market of making. And if you look, I just looked up in November of 2019 when Concrete Genie came out, the PSN top downloads of 20 games, Concrete Genie isn't on it. And I don't know if it may have charted later on, but I kind of don't think so. And so I think that it's saying something about that they did care about the team, that they kept going with them despite two, and I don't mean this too negatively, but two mediocre games. Not that they're bad, they're just fine, as Colin was saying, right? So they stuck with them regardless. And like you said, I think that it has to do with this next project just wasn't shaping up. And then, so there's that in combination with a new Sony strategy that's not the same, which, by the way, I get it, but I think this new strategy for Sony kind of sucks because, I don't know, as a fan of those smaller games like Everybody's Golf, the fact that we're not getting anything like that anymore is disappointing. I get it. You want to go for the blockbusters. That's what really makes you the money. And I love those type of games, but I also really appreciate those smaller games. But,
I do too. I totally hear you there. I mean, Sony publishes fewer games than ever. They used to publish... Jaffe was bringing this up, and it's true. There were years where Sony published like 100 games, literally. Mm-hmm. And now they publish 3. You know, it is, things have definitely changed. Like Tokyo Jungle is a good example of that. That game Rain, Datora, Linger in Shadow. Those days are done. Yeah. I very well said, Dustin. I totally agree with you there.
Yeah. So like you said, you feel bad for a team getting shut down, but one, it sounds like a lot of them got absorbed into the greater Sony.
That's how I read it on LinkedIn. I don't know. Yeah. You know, it's just Sony didn't say anything about laying anyone off. That one guy, Dominic Robier or whatever, has been with Sony for 20 years. And I feel like you can't, as far as I understand, they are in Sony HQ in San Mateo. So there's not even like a building space. They're kind of like how that game company used to work and Giant Sparrow used to work at Santa Monica back in the day. So I think that there's probably very little overhead and probably a couple dozen people. And so I just don't think it matters. I hate to say that. I feel bad. I think Pixelopus is cool, and I wish I saw what maybe it'll leak whatever they were working on. But Sony moves on. I mean, I was talking to Jaffe recently. We talked about it on the show at the time, I believe, but that Sucker Punch game Prophecy was canceled in between Infamous Second Son and Ghost of Tsushima. There's fucking gameplay footage of it. It looks pretty, I mean, I'm sure it's a vertical slice, but it looks pretty damn AAA too, you know? So if they're going to cancel shit like that, I imagine they're not going to have any problem canceling this stuff, whatever they were working on. So I don't think it's as calamitous. Again, it's not a protective thing. It sucks. It's like an optical thing. It's like, yeah, you lost one of your first party studios. Clearly they didn't know that was going to happen. They were tweeting and acting like nothing was going to happen as of the beginning of this month. They were included as one of the 20 studios that Herman Holst talked about when they announced the purchase of Firewalk. So this wasn't in the cards. They probably had a calamitous failure of. It's also a Sony funded game, by the way. I should say it's not like a product outside. If they're working with Sony Animation, then they're working on one of their own products. So it literally must have just been a failure of quality. And we don't want that. So you don't want anyone to lose their jobs, but I don't want that. And you're right, Dustin, that we're missing those games, and I miss them too. I think Sony's argument here, though, is we get 100% of the money we make on PlayStation Network. If we're going to demand people's time and money, we should get the time and money at the top. Everyone else can fight over the middle space, pay us 30%, and we don't have to worry about it. And I think that's probably where, I mean, you say you don't like it and I say I don't like it, but it's worked out pretty well.
Right.
I mean, we don't get as many games as we want, no doubt, but who thinks Spider-Man 2 is going to be anything less than amazing? Pardon the pun. Chris, how do you feel about the closure of Pixelopus, my friend?
Well, I don't disagree with what you guys are saying, but I also, there is part of me that does kind of feel like there is a pattern with these studios that close and the types of games that they specifically don't make. And that kind of, that does sort of rub me the wrong way in some way, because I'm sure there is a, you know, a milestone that they fail to reach. And I'm sure there's probably a multitude of reasons why they're more willing to, you know, shut down a studio in a climate where that's probably not going to look the best, you know, and they're willing to take that PR hit for, you know, a good reason. But I do look at this as another example of just like, man, if it really does feel like if you can't contribute to their new live service initiative, or if you can't make this over the shoulder, you know, cinematic, over dramatic or RPG light story heavy game, then you're just not in it. And that's cool. That's fine. Like it's clearly paying well. It's like people love these games. They do well. But I don't know. I do feel like there's especially with Media Molecule in the shape that it's in, following all this all the Dream shutdown stuff. It just feels like there's such a lack of flavor in first party that I can't help but notice. And it's a little frustrating too, because if you are somebody who like looks at the first party and you're like, okay, you have over the shoulder third person action RPG like game, third person over the shoulder action RPG like game, you know, and you're a little bit bored with that, and then you look over at Xbox and they're releasing like broken, you know, like, you know, like where do you go? I feel kind of like I'm in a place where I feel like remarkably underserved by the industry right now, because like the interesting stuff that could exist is over at Xbox and it's broken and it doesn't work and no one can figure out how to do it. And the stuff that's really, really good is derivative. And it is kind of a shame to have, you know, just this lack of flavor. And I wouldn't necessarily say that Pixelopus was the biggest contributor to that flavor. I think arguably Media Molecule and like maybe Japan Studio were a little bit more in that vein. But like it, I don't know, man. I just want more of that flavor back. And to see a studio close, that just sucks. Like in every facet of it. There's a good reason for it, I'm sure. I'm sure whatever they're making isn't, you know, necessarily maximum quality. But then I look at, you know, I look at Days Gone and they're still here. And I think they're still here because they made that game. They made the over the shoulder, you know, narrative heavy kind of RPG light game. They made that game. It wasn't amazing, didn't set the world on fire, but they made that game. And I feel like there's part of me that feels like maybe that's why they're still around, is because they proved that they could at least make that game. And that kind of, I don't know, it rubs me the wrong way in some way.
Yeah, I understand what you're saying. I think that there's no denying that compared to its competition in Xbox, Sony has a much more monotypical first party family that does. You can't deny polyphony and all of that. Like,
of course,
media molecule, I guess, and whatever. But generally speaking, they don't even make shooters anymore, right? So it's like first person shooters. So I agree with you there. And when you go back, it's interesting looking at the brands that they've shut down and why. I don't know that any of these studios until more recently, in fact, I know that they weren't shut down because they couldn't deliver the next game. That's why I feel a little bit less bad for Pixelopus, because they at least had a chance. And who knows, maybe what they were working on was awesome and Sony just said this still doesn't make sense for us. But I don't think so. You know, because why would you? That's like such a sunk cost. And I would think that, and I'm looking through the list as I put it, like Incognito was closed down after Warhawk, I want to say. And then Big was shut down after Little Deviants.
Yeah.
So that was a Vita game. SOCOM was shut down after SOCOM 4 and Unit 13, which both kind of, I thought Unit 13 was awesome, but kind of failed.
That felt like the most unjust one.
Well, that's the one that if they could probably undo, in hindsight, they would probably undo. Was like, we shouldn't have done that. Because they could have had this marinating. I know for a fact, because I know people that worked at Zipper, that SOCOM 5 was going to be a thing on PlayStation 4. Like that was what the next game was, so but that the rug was pulled out from under them and they made Unit 13. My friend Jeremy Dunham wrote Unit 13, who was the founder of Podcast Beyond. And they made that game in like 6 months. They just didn't give them any time, and it's pretty impressive because another game that was made there were two other games on Vita that were made in 6 months or less. Resistance Burning Skies and Call of Duty Declassified or whatever. And both of those games suck. And Unit 13 definitely doesn't suck. And those other two games both came from the same studio, Nihilistic, of course. And then when you look at the other teams that closed, Liverpool was a weird one because Liverpool was Psygnosis and Psygnosis is their first team. So that was a weird gut punch to a lot of people because it's like, whoa, man. And that happened after Wipeout 2048. And then Evolution was probably the biggest example of you failed. And that was after Drive Club.
Yeah.
And Gorilla Cambridge, which used to be Sony Cambridge, they did Riggs, so they were out, and Mercenary, of course, on Vita. And then Manchester Studio, so this is when it begins that studios start failing in development.
Internally. Yeah.
Right. Manchester Studio never even releases a game after 3 years or never even announces a game. You necessarily release a game in that period, but they never announced anything. And then Japan Studio, clearly something went awry there. But at the same time, what happened with Japan Studio is almost the exact opposite of what we're saying, in the sense that they said, we're actually going to reduce the size of this extremely. And Team Asobi is, if anything, maybe the most promising creative team that they have. So it could go in both directions, but I don't know, man. I'm not saying this just to be a defender of PlayStation Studios at all. It's just Pixelopus is maybe the least important studio Sony owns. And it might not even be close. So I wouldn't, with no disrespect to them, the times have changed. If they were alive during the PS3 era of PSN, they probably would have been a big team. When Sony would have an event every month that I would go to where they'd have 7 new fucking, PSN games to play. And you're like, where did this shit even come from? Escape Plan and Fat Princess. But those days are done. And I don't necessarily blame them. Little risk, little gain. Big risk, big gain. It's truly that simple in business. And I think they look at it and say, like, why would we spend $10 million on a game we will make $2 million in profit on? Who cares? Who gives a shit? When we just sold, well, let's talk about it. Number 2. We talk a great deal on this podcast about Horizon's future, and we've openly wondered whether plans for its future are a little too ambitious. Well, with quite a few projects both announced and rumored that plan to flesh that universe out in the years to come. Well, sales figures recently unveiled by the IP's home studio Guerrilla indicate that some may be underestimating the franchise's reach. At the end of a post on the official PlayStation blog celebrating 20 years as a studio, Guerrilla notes that the newest core Horizon game, Horizon Forbidden West, has officially sold 8.4 million copies, making it a huge hit across PS4 and PS5. This likewise brings Horizon's life-to-date sales figures as a fledgling franchise to 32.7 million copies, and considering there are only 3 games in the franchise to date, and considering that one of them is a PSVR 2 game that may have sold a few 100,000 copies at most, that's a big pull from 2 full-price AAA titles. And context is important too. Horizon is Sony's 6th best-selling exclusive franchise in brand history, behind Gran Turismo, God of War, Uncharted, The Last of Us, and Spider-Man. Started in 2017 on PS4 with the seminal game Zero Dawn, 2022 sequel Forbidden West is actually experiencing greater sales velocity, and Guerrilla recently confirmed what anyone who beat the second game already knew: a third, likely final Aloy-centric Horizon game is coming. But that's not all. Guerrilla is also known to be working on a multiplayer Horizon game, and South Korean firm NCSoft is rumored to be making a Horizon MMORPG too. Then there's the rumored and likely very real PS5 re-release / remake of Horizon Zero Dawn, in addition to a TV show coming to Netflix. Dustin, Horizon Zero Dawn, or not Zero Dawn, Horizon generally. So Horizon Zero Dawn, Horizon Forbidden West, Horizon Call of the Mountain, plus the DLC as well. Selling appreciably. 6th best-selling franchise in Sony history. Are we underselling how big Horizon actually is? Let's put it through this lens. We just talked about how Hogwarts Legacy sold 15 million copies. Hogwarts Legacy is a Harry Potter game available on multiple consoles, multiple ecosystems. I think it's fairly impressive that Horizon has sold this much when you can consider that it's really only playable on PlayStation. You can play it on PC as well, and there are only 2 of them. So is Horizon bigger than we think?
Bigger than we think. Well, I'm wondering how much, and I'm not this. I don't want this to come off as discrediting at all, but I'm sure the fact that it was was it the first bundle for PS5? The first bundle in game?
Maybe, I don't know. I can look. Keep going.
I remember that during an era where before we had the plethora of PS5s in the market now, that was one of the big things, is that people, if you could get a PS5, it was most likely going to be on PlayStation Direct, and it was probably going to be the Horizon bundle.
Yeah, the bundle is the first, but that was the first game bundled with a console. Right.
And whether you want the game or not, you were buying it. But, and I think that, you know, again, it's not to discredit, because a lot of people bought that game and or bought that bundle and wanted that game as part of it. Or maybe they didn't want the game and they played it and really enjoyed it. But yeah, these are good numbers. And I'm sure that when Forbidden West comes to PC, a lot of people will double dip, just like they did for Horizon Zero Dawn when that came to PC as well, as long as they don't fuck it up like they did with The Last of Us Part 1 on PC. So yeah, this is cool numbers. And I wonder too, what kind of effect a Netflix show will have, because we just saw this with The Last of Us, how The Last of Us Part 1 shot back up in the charts. And I'm sure even Last of Us Part 2 saw a sales increase as well from that show. And so, man, and two, I always forget about this remake of the first game and what that looks like.
Rumored, but seemingly real.
Rumored. Yeah, you know, this has been percolating for a while now, and we haven't heard any new rumors or any kind of confirmation, but clearly there are very big plans. And, you know, we've been saying this for a while, but I think Horizon burnout could be a very real thing, particularly if some of these projects don't turn out. I mean, just based on the numbers on how many Horizon things are coming, it would be a total home run if they got all of them amazing right out the gate. But I don't know. We'll see. Horizon is an interesting game to me in that it sells really well, it reviews really well, but I feel like the conversation around it is always really interesting, and that there's a lot of people that are like, yeah, I played it. It was all right. You know, and there are some people that really love it. There's some people that really hate it, but it's one of those games that I think people are, especially some of the hardcore fans, are in for the ride. They're going to play it no matter what, but they're not necessarily evangelists of it like you are, Colin. You know, there's kind of lukewarm sounds too harsh.
It's crazy how it could be lukewarm. Like, what is wrong with Horizon that it doesn't attract even more people? I guess is so interesting. It's fucking awesome. It's so cool. I
can tell you what I don't like about it.
I'm sorry.
I can tell you what I don't like about it.
Yeah. I think it just gets in its way. Really, because the combat is cool, but it's just there's so much fluff to it, and it's just like, let me get to the combat. I think that's actually why the multiplayer game actually kind of stands to benefit the most. I think it's the more I think about it, and the more I think about like Monster Hunter, and the more I think about like just the general idea of like this kind of combat loop being the sole focus of the game, and just sort of like being able to do this with like friends, the more that makes sense to me, and the more appealing that is to me. As far as like whether or not, I mean, milking a franchise is a negative connotation, but if you want to milk anything from Horizon, it's the gameplay for sure. And so I don't know.
Yeah. I'd like to hear it also from you, Dustin, about what.
So this is this is 100% my opinion. I'm not trying to say any kind of objective facts about Horizon, but I feel like this is kind of the sentiment, and I think I've explained this before, so I'm sorry if you've already heard it, but Horizon is rooted in a traditional way of making open world games, in that the world, as far as like the lore, the characters and the type of people within it and the enemies are cool, but the gameplay world does not inspire wonder within me in a way that Elden Ring or Breath of the Wild does. And that's really what I'm looking for now that this type of open world game has been introduced to me. I don't feel like exploring in a Horizon game. I'm not walking around and thinking, whoa, what's going on over there? Let's check that out. And that's fine. I guess that if you are looking for a traditional style open world game where you look at a map, you see the types of activities, you click on one, and then you get a GPS route on how to get there. A lot of people are really into that. Colin, that's really your shit. And so it makes sense that this totally appeals to you. But for me, and as you've pointed out before, Colin, I just am not really into traditional types of open world games. I play them here and there. But to me, that's what I want from Horizon, is this idea of being able to go in the world and not just feel like I'm on a GPS route to the next activity. I want the world to invite me to explore it and find things and be like, whoa, I wondered if you found this. Did you do this? No, I didn't do that. Or when I was here, I saw these robots fighting these guys and I helped out or something. It's just that level of emergent gameplay is not there for me in Horizon.
Yeah, that's fair. I understand that. And Chris, you have anything you want to add before I? No. Yeah, because what I wanted to say about Horizon is, no matter how much I like it, I just think that there's too much of a good thing. There's such a thing as too much of a good thing. And this is true with everything. And when you show restraint, it shows in some way more confidence in your product, because you feel like you can get more out of it over a longer period of time, or be restrained in some way, and you don't have to beat a dead horse. And so no matter how good Horizon is or could be in my mind, I'm disappointed that they seem to want to just beat it into the ground nonetheless. And I don't really think anything. All right. So how would I put this? I don't think any IP is good enough to have all of those games in development at the same time. None, not one. Why would you do that? So I just think you let things shine and sing more. And Sony's got to remember that it used to kind of let things breathe a little more. We used to get games in sequence. In fact, we'd get them in like 2 years, but they would be like, 1, 2, 3 out, 1, 2, 3 out. Think of Sly Cooper and kind of how it came back at the fourth game, but it went away. Infamous went away. Uncharted went away. Resistance gone. Killzone gone. It's like they didn't dwell and marinate. And I don't know that they're finding necessarily IP that are necessarily worthy of dwelling on this long. And I just think it's like Star Wars syndrome at some point. Okay, what Horizon this and Horizon that and Horizon this, and like, all right, whatever, man. Yeah. You had this awesome idea about robot dinosaurs and the end of the world and all this, and you just fucked it up. But they're not there yet, because I will say this: Forbidden West, dope, absolutely wonderful game. Yeah,
Colin, you could say absence makes the heart grow fonder.
That's exactly
where
right.
The time between Horizon games makes you more excited, but if there's a new Horizon game every 8 to 12 months, it's different. I mean, people know this, but that's how I feel about Star Wars. It's too much of a good thing. Like you said, it's just, you no longer yearn for it because it's just there all the time of some varying quality.
Yeah, it's I don't know, man. You got to take risks to discover the new Horizons, to discover the new Ghost of Tsushima. You can revisit these, and of course, but there is going to be an expectation that something will come and supplant them at some point. And I know that they have these things in operation, certainly within the games as a service space, but let's not forget what we need. We need something. We don't need something. We need a continuous flow of high quality first party, story driven single player games, which is the beating heart of PlayStation. So hopefully they remember that, and I think they will. But congratulations to Guerrilla. I mean, awesome sales figures, blows Killzone sales figures out of the fucking water. Is no question why they would move on. I mean, the Killzone games would sell a few million copies each. Okay. Number 3. In an unusual but not necessarily unprecedented announcement, Japanese developer GameFreak revealed a collaboration with Take-Two-owned publishing label Private Division to create an action-adventure game called Project Bloom. And while no platforms have been revealed, every single Private Division game launched in the label's history has come to PlayStation, and so it's assumed that this one will be no different, though the press release announcing it makes no note of platforms whatsoever. Now, you'll know Private Division as the publisher of the likes of Obsidian's 2019 WRPG The Outer Worlds, Roll7's duo of 2022 releases, an Ollie World and Rollerdrome, and others, and they have more than a half a dozen upcoming games, untitled games from studios like Bloober Team, Moon Studios, and Weta Workshop. That's all well and good, but it's developer GameFreak that's of real interest because that is the team behind Pokemon. And while we're certainly not getting anything like Pokemon here, they are potentially getting another bite at the apple of creating something big. With only a lone piece of concept art, one that shows a humanoid figure standing in an oversaturated forest, it's impossible to say what the game will be, or is like, but it's described as, quote, a sweeping new action-adventure game, end quote, by GameFreak, with Take-Two stating that they're, quote, ready to help GameFreak unleash their potential, and we're honored to be the first Western publisher to work alongside this exceptionally talented and proven team to bring a bold new IP to market, end quote. The release window for the game is Take-Two's 2026 fiscal year, which stretches into the 2027 calendar year. The game will be directed by Kota Furushima, designer of a slate of 3DS and Switch Pokemon titles. Everything else concerning the title is a mystery. GameFreak, founded in the late 80s in Japan, worked with Nintendo since its earliest days, and actually published an SNES game called Smart Ball with a pre-PlayStation Sony in the early 90s. Its earliest hit was the 1992 NES puzzle game Yoshi, and in 1996 in Japan, they released the first Pokemon game with Nintendo, setting the world on fire. They've since primarily developed Pokemon games only, although there are exceptions, and as noted, while Take-Two is the first Western publisher to work with them, they've worked with several Japanese entities outside of Nintendo over the years. The most notable examples of games outside of Pokemon include the 2005 Game Boy Advance game Drill Dozer and the 2012 3DS game Harmo Knight, both with the Nintendo, the 2015 platformer Tembo the Badass Elephant with Sega, which I liked. I liked that game. And the 2019 RPG Little Town Hero, which came to PS4 that year. Nerds will also know that in the late 90s, GameFreak released a game with Sony on Japanese PS1 called Click Medic, a bizarre adventure title that never saw a Western localization. Brenton wrote in and said, hey, CDC, I wanted to get the sacred opinion on the new IP announced by GameFreak. The pick looks interesting, and I'm very curious to see what this team can accomplish outside of Pokemon. As always, thanks for the great content and cheers from Pittsburgh. Chris, let's go to you first. GameFreak plus Take-Two and Private Division. Potential here to do something huge. I mean, GameFreak is responsible for one of the greatest game franchises of all time, although I would argue that I don't know how they get away with making the same game over and over. Yeah, anyway, go ahead.
You're probably hinting on something that I feel, which is, I mean, GameFreak, how do I put that? GameFreak is big because Pokemon kind of just was a phenomenon. You know, like I like there's not, when you look at Pokemon games as they are, like they were special. Like I remember like really enjoying them when I was young. Like they had, you know, wonderful music, and it was they were cute. They were baby's first JRPG is how I kind of describe those games in some way. And that's fine. but I don't know if Game Freak's development talent is what makes Pokemon so big. You know what I mean? I think arguably the anime and the cultural significance of what Pokemon is, which is, obviously thanks to them in some way. But modern Game Freak titles sell well because of the legacy of Pokemon and not because of the quality of the game. And my concern is, and it's interesting because Take-Two is actually like a really good, Take-Two is generally like a pretty solid publisher. Like they know how to pick projects pretty well. Private Division as kind of like the sub-label, I'm a little bit less big on. But I don't know what Game Freak's potential is, because the last Pokemon, the last Pokemon game that came out was horrendous. like people that I know who love Pokemon couldn't stand it, and that's crazy. Like that Pokemon fans have standards at all is astounding.
That was
to
a
me.
Surprise to you, yeah.
Like that was a surprise to me. Like that I really thought that Game Freak could put out like an MP4 of them like shitting in a bucket to like Lavender Town theme, and like it would still be like the best selling. Like it doesn't seem to me like they need anything to be entertained, because these like they're not good. They're just not good. And so to me, when I see Game Freak partnering with Take-Two is the part of the equation that has my interest more than Game Freak, because I'm wondering what Take-Two saw in Game Freak to even get in bed with them, because Take-Two puts out pretty good shit. So that is more enticing to me. It's less about the Game Freak and less about that. It's more about what in God's name does Take-Two see in whatever the hell Game Freak is working on? And more important, and another point of curiosity is, does Pokemon kind of suck now because Game Freak is just way more interested in doing this other thing? That's also like kind of something that's on my mind. I don't know. We'll see what happens. It does have potential to be big, but I really only think that because Take-Two has the potential to really put Game Freak on a path that maybe could be actually worthwhile, and there's probably some quality control there that doesn't exist in some of the other IP that they've traditionally had a handle on.
Yeah, it's interesting. I think part of the stagnation of Pokemon is simply, from my perspective, is simply because there is no expectation of anything but the same thing over and over and over and over and over again. It's a very unique. It actually puts things like Madden to shame in some way, where you'd think you're getting the same game over and over again, and those are actually like year over year, a little bit different and a little bit different, and a little bit refined. And yeah, that's a good point. Who knows what Game Freak's potential is? What do you think of this, Dustin?
I don't want to do this, but I have to. I have to defend Game Freak a little bit.
Okay.
Because I agree. I think that there's no excuse for releasing the Pokemon game, particularly Scarlet and Violet, in the way that they did. To their credit, they have released a Pokemon game almost every year for decades. They didn't release one in 2015. That's the year they released Tembo. But in 2022, they released 2 Pokemon games back to back. Now, I've always wondered what the relationship is between Game Freak, Pokemon, and Nintendo, in that, to me, it feels like a team that is expected to do these yearly releases, and just as the games became more advanced and people wanted more as far as like full 3D environments and stuff like that, and going open world, that they just weren't. These types of games can no longer be turned around in a year by this type of team, right? It demands. It's like a Call of Duty releasing every year. They now have multiple developers to kind of keep that same quality. But I don't know if it's Nintendo, Pokemon Company, or a combination of all three or whatever that made this decision. It's like, come on, got to keep pumping them out. It doesn't matter if it's good. And that is part of the problem, is that people keep buying this shit, particularly with Scarlet and Violet, regardless of the quality. And that's the thing, is that people didn't send that signal that it's okay that you're turning around these games and I mean, they released two of these games in the same year. And Arceus, at least, was interesting and different and not necessarily an insanely buggy mess like Scarlet and Violet. But surely the development of Arceus directly affected Scarlet and Violet, and has to be part of the reason why it's not good, is that they were too focused on this other game or didn't have enough time for the next one. So with all that being said, I wonder if they're still on the yearly Pokemon grind, and so that's going to affect how long or the quality of this other game. But at the same time, if, let's say, Pokemon's out of the picture, clearly this is a team that has some level of high talent to be able to, even if it's diminishing returns, releasing these types of games every year. So to see them not be constrained to an IP or constrained to an insane timeline could yield good results.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is that I don't want to defend these Pokemon games at all. I wish that Nintendo or Pokemon, whoever, would just chill the fuck out and let them make an excellent Pokemon game. Because I don't know, but I wonder if they have it in them to do it. They're just a victim of this constant content churn where we need to have a $60 game on the shelf every year. So I don't know. I'm not hopeful, based on all these releases, and the stuff they've done outside of Pokemon has been mixed at best. I know that Little Town Hero game wasn't that great, but I don't know. Let them be, Nintendo. Let them take some actual fucking time to make a Pokemon game, or with this opportunity with Private Division, maybe we'll see them flex a bit, but I'm not hopeful.
All right, we'll see. I trust what you guys are saying, that I think GameFreak's quality bar is belied by Pokemon's popularity. And Pokemon, there's the Pokemon Company and all of the different triangulation, like you said, between these entities. But Take-Two has a ton of money. Private Division, I doubt that. Like, Game Freak certainly got money to staff up and make a team to do something with them. I would assume something, they probably incubated an idea, brought it over. That idea was picked up. Then they go back and they buff out. And like I said, the game looks like a 2027. Really, I mean, that's so crazy that we're talking about that window, 2026, 2027. Okay. Number 4. In an awesome piece of news, which Sony should be authentically commended for, the Japanese corporation has announced the so-called India Hero Project, an attempt to find, fund, incubate, and ultimately help release games from, in this case, the Indian market. Announced via press release, the India Hero Project, quote, aims to identify promising local developers and support them in bringing compelling gaming experiences to global gaming communities. As part of our evolving journey to ensure that PlayStation remains the best place to play, we're committed to developing regional incubator programs capable of identifying new and diverse developers worldwide. The India Hero Project is fueled by this commitment and our belief in the Indian gaming market. Through mentorship, training, and project-based investment, PlayStation strives to lower the barrier of entry and showcase the most incredible talents emerging from India, end quote. Participants can sign up now on the official website for the program, which claims benefits from, quote, access to Sony's internal resources, end quote, and, quote, recoupable development funding from Sony, end quote, to an, quote, opportunity for your title and company to be featured globally and the possibility for your game to be published by Sony, end quote. Applying developers can be any size, but obviously must be based in and working out of India. Applicable titles can be from virtually any genre and can be for some combination of PS5, PSVR 2, and PC. Now, if the naming of this project sounds familiar, it's because it isn't Sony's first so-called hero project. Sony launched the China Hero Project midway through the PlayStation 4's life cycle in an attempt to help incubate games from the Chinese development scene, and they succeeded in doing so. Reuters reported last year that Sony had funded 17 Chinese games since 2017, and 7 have reached market so far, including the likes of Anno Mutadium, I can never say that, Mutatinum, I can never say that, Fist, Forged and Shadow Torch, Convaleria, and In Nightmare, with more forthcoming. India, one of Earth's most populated countries, has a woefully underdeveloped core gaming market, and its game development scene is virtually non-existent. Traditionally dominated by casual PC and mobile gaming and victimized by rampant piracy, only in recent years have console manufacturers set their sights on the Indian market, and there's no doubt plenty of projects that will see the light of day in the years to come. We don't have to marinate on this too long, but I wanted to say that this is so wise of Sony to do things like this. They have they're kind of trying to do things, I think, in South America too, in Brazil and other places. But you go and you build goodwill with developers, like the most talented tip of the spear developers in the country, like India, with 1 billion people in it. And they remember that. And the brand becomes bigger and the brand becomes more respected, and PlayStation takes chances and gives them money. And I think that will bear fruit 5, 10, 15, 20 years down the road for PlayStation. I think that was the entire idea behind the China Hero project. Sony has a much more advanced place in China right now than, for instance, Xbox and Nintendo could ever hope to have. And I think a lot of that came from an aggressive pursuing of local market talent. But the problem is, and I actually, people might remember, I did a Sacred Symbols Plus episode all about Indian gaming, like the gaming scene in India, and it's not great. So we have to be patient, because there are people that play console games there. There are people that love PlayStation there, but it's not prolific. And it wasn't even a thing until, recent years at all. But I think it's really exciting, and I'm excited to see what games can come out of India, similar to China. I mean, it's just a good place to be. And finally, number 5, it's once again time, as it is each month, for a new refresh to the PlayStation Plus Extra and Premium game catalogs, as relayed by the official PlayStation blog. As usual, these games are for the middle and highest tier on PS Plus and not for the lowest or essential tier. Beginning May 16th, the following rather impressive catalog of games will be available for subscribers, perhaps most prominent amongst them, the brand new Lemmings-like game Humanity on PS4 and PS5. The game includes support for both PSVR and PSVR 2 and comes by way of The Limited. A big first-party game joins up too in the form of Insomniac's PS5 exclusive Ratchet & Clank Rift Apart, Ubisoft's 2020 open-world game Watch Dogs Legion on PS4 and PS5, Arcane's 2016 PS4 stealth game Dishonored 2, and its 2017 expansion Death of the Outsider, Edelweiss's 2020 PS4 simulation RPG Sakuna of Rice and Ruin, 2014's Tomb Raider Definitive Edition, 2015's Rise of the Tomb Raider, and 2018's Shadow of the Tomb Raider, the first 2 from Crystal Dynamics, and the third from now defunct team Eidos Montreal, and all on PlayStation 4. 2021's self-explanatory Bus Simulator 21 on both PS4 and PS5. Tango Gameworks 2017 PS4 horror game The Evil Within 2. Machine Games and Arcane's ill-conceived 2019 PS4 shooter Wolfenstein Youngblood. Taiwanese Souls-like game Timesia for PS5, first launched in 2022. Video Cult's 2017 PS4 survival game Rain World, 2021 adventure game Lake on both PS4 and PS5, Funcom's 2018 survival game Conan Exiles on PS4, the 2021 PS4 re-release of the 2012 3DS farming game, the RPG Rune Factory 4, and finally, the 2022 dungeon crawler Soundfall for both PS4 and PS5. Fall. In addition, 4 classic games are coming to PlayStation Plus Premium, available for both PS4 and PS5, and it's unclear if any of them will be available to purchase a la carte. The biggest game of the bunch is the final Siphon Filter game, the 2007 PSP game Logan Shadow, via developer Sony Bend. But the most interesting game of the 4 is no doubt the PSP game Pursuit Force, which launched in 2005 in Europe and 2006 in the US, and which comes from Big Studios, perhaps Sony's most seldom discussed one-time first parties that was shut down following the launch of Little Deviants on Vita in 2012. The other 2 aforementioned games at this tier is the obscure PSP RPG Blade Dancer Lineage of Light from 2006 and the 2019 PS4 re-release of the 2009 PS3 game Ghostbusters, the video game. Dustin, what do you think of that? Pretty good catalog this month if you're interested. It's too much for me to handle. I'm just not interested in these subscriptions, but a lot of good stuff there for people that are interested, including a lot of stuff clearly born out of what seemed to be a years-long agreement with Bethesda before Microsoft acquired them, because there's just more machine game stuff, more arcane stuff. It's pretty funny to see that stuff, since I'm sure that is not ideal for Microsoft at this point.
Yeah. The additions to the extra tier are awesome. That Humanity game, I played the demo. I think that looks absolutely fantastic. I'm excited.
Yeah, he plays a dog, right?
Yeah, he plays a little dog, and you these people you have to guide them around. Like you said, it was like Lemmings, and that's exactly what it reminded me of. Playable in PSVR 2 as well, which was kind of a neat way to play it. But some of these other additions, I mean, Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider are both fantastic games that I highly recommend people check out, especially if you liked Deathloop and never played these. You absolutely have to go and play them. I've always wanted to check out this Sakuna of Rice and Ruin game. I've heard that game's awesome. I've never gotten to it. And then we got to talk about these classics. Thank God that this is the last Siphon Filter game that they can possibly release.
I don't think they've released them all, though. I think that they just
haven't?
I don't think so. I think that let me look, but yeah, go on.
Because it's just, I know Siphon Filter fans, I'm glad that you're eating well, but we need more than this.
Siphon Filter fan.
Siphon Filter fan, stand down. We need more than this. And some of these obscure PSP games, this is cool. This is a nice side dish. This is what should be a side dish to the amazing catalog that you have access to, Sony. And you just continue to just do nothing and ask for all this extra monthly. I appreciate that they did Legend of Dragoon a few months ago at this point. The feed, it needs to be better. Again, I recommend if you're signed up to the premium tier, lower it because you deserve better than this for the price you're paying. Go to Extra. Extra sounds like a good deal. That's what you're into. This premium tier kind of sucks, and we demand better.
This actually is the final. So it's the final Siphon Filter game in the franchise and in the story. There is, though, so that would be 5 Siphon Filter games now available. There is a 6th Siphon Filter game people might remember, which is Omega Strain. However, that was the PS2 game that people might remember was the multiplayer game that you could play it through single player, but John Garvin apparently claimed that was like tacked on at the end and that it was really just meant to be a straight up multiplayer game. So in other words, there's a chance that will not happen. That will not come. So this will be it. Yeah.
Good.
So there you go. What else here? Anything for you, Chris, that interests you here?
Nothing that I haven't already played. It's I do feel like, I don't know, this premium tier is, I don't know. I don't know what their goal is with the premium tier, really. It seems like the best value really is everything below it. But Tomb Raider, those Tomb Raider games are solid. I think obviously like Dishonored 2 and Death of the Outsider are like amazing. Really, 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 really good. That's like Arcane. That's like top tier Arcane. If we're not talking Prey, but I don't know. Everything on this list that I have interest in playing, I've already played. So it's kind of one of these things. Like it's decent, not bad. Especially if you just started video games this month, you got a lot of good stuff.
Yeah, if you're just beginning right now, where do you even begin?
Yeah.
I don't even know where to begin. So the interesting game to me here, as I said, was Pursuit Force.
Yeah, what is that?
Pursuit Force is a PSP game, but and it's an action game. It's kind of like, I don't want to say it's like Grand Theft Auto-ish. It's like over the top action. There are on foot missions and boat missions and like I think helicopter missions, and it's just this like action chase game. And the studio that did that big was a British studio, and Sony purchased them after the release of Pursuit Force, before I think Pursuit Force Extreme Justice, which was the sequel, came out. And they were originally acquired to be kind of a handheld specialist. And they ended up releasing the MotorStorm PSP game Arctic Edge that people might remember from 2009. And then their final game was Little Deviants, which was that Vita launch game that used the back touchpad and all of that. And then they were closed down. So just seeing that game pop up, that's probably the most obscure studio that Sony has ever purchased or acquired in any way. And to see that game pop up, it's interesting that they remember them and that they are going to bring Pursuit Force back. And I actually had never played Pursuit Force very fully. I played the sequel a little bit, but I'm actually going to check it out as long as it's available a la carte. I'm not subscribing to anything. Okay. That's it for the news, my friends. Let's get into 6 questions, comments, concerns, thoughts, and ideas. We end every episode of Sacred Symbols by hearing from you in the audience. You can submit your inquiries over on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. I publish a thread in the newsfeed every week. You just reply to that with your inquiry. You can DM me, of course, but that's not how you get written on the show. You will not be included if you write in there. So just keep that in mind. All right, let's begin with BG. He says, "Hey, Sacred Gang. In a since deleted video, a staff member at IGN explained why so many of the games they review get 7s. One of the things he said was, if you never heard of the game, we probably wouldn't review it, and it probably isn't that good anyway. There was a lot of backlash, but I actually think he is right. Even though there are great gems that we don't know about, I think that out of 10,000 games that come out each year, the majority that you don't hear about probably wouldn't be very good anyway. because there's so much shovelware out there. Interested in your thoughts. Dustin, did you see this circulating about this? I thought that they were making a fair point and then put a really stupid exclamation point at the end of it, right? Which was to say, we've said this for years. There are so many sevens because games that generate some level of production value, that have PR behind it, that get people's attention, that come from big publishers, that will sell meaningful copies. It's it's exceedingly rare for these games to be truly bad. And since you're not going to review the truly bad games that have no budget because you've never heard of them, it does make sense that there would be a lot of 6s, 7s, and 8s. That always made sense to me. But to say that you wouldn't review a game and it wouldn't be very good anyway is a complete discount and is totally stupid. And as far as I understand, they deleted that tweet, which was smart. And I'm not one of these guys that declares that anyone needs to apologize. It's just that you need to understand that sounds so tone deaf and makes it seem like, first of all, that IGN has any real relevance anymore in the critical flow of how people play games, because they don't anymore. They did at one time, but that's not true anymore. And also just is like, you can trip over a fucking great game that you've never heard of. I don't understand what you're talking about. There's so many great games, and they definitely don't get Metacritic scores. So anyway, what do you think?
Yeah, I think you put it well in that there is some truth to it, but at the same time, obviously these sites are dependent on the big AAA games that people are most interested in. But I do think that there should be something that people in games media should be looking at these smaller games, looking for the next hidden gem and being able to bring that to the world. It may not be the most profitable endeavor, but just because a game doesn't have a giant marketing budget so you know about it doesn't mean that it probably isn't that good anyway. That's I think is a problem, is that there are these awesome games that maybe don't have the money to promote themselves the same way, or don't have the connections to get proper reviews or get on the PR cycle or whatever. And I bet you there are tons of awesome games that just were forgotten about or never got that limelight. And so I'm not saying that IGN or any other site needs to go and look at every game ever released ever, but I think that it is cool when there's games that get discovered later on after release, or someone goes and highlights a game. It's like, hey, this is actually pretty damn awesome, and then can create a new audience for a game because you have that that built-in audience from a website or a podcast or whatever, that you can say, hey, go check this out, because maybe they didn't have the money to promote it, but it's actually pretty damn good.
Yeah.
So
yeah, well said. Before I go on further, because I wanted to get you involved, what do you think about this? Yeah, IGN and the plight of the 7s.
I got to be honest. Like the reaction to this kind of struck me as a little bit too sensitive.
Yeah,
because like watching the video, like, yeah, I get it. Okay, like he worded it weird, but I understood exactly what he was saying. Like if there's like an amazing game, right? Let's say like there's like this really like crown jewel, and 2 people have played it, and neither of those people are reviewers, and there's no buzz about it. Yeah, why would they review it? Like I don't know. Like I felt like people were like a little bit. I feel like there is a general culture of, I don't know what this is necessarily or what to call it, but like if you could measure the amount of hate, right, for an institution or a content creator or a figure or whatever, each individual notch exponentially increases in its own individual value. And so because a lot of people really already don't like IGN, this really minor infraction, in my view, was worth like 50 hates.
Yeah,
does that make sense? Yeah, you know what I mean?
Makes perfect sense.
Like it, and whereas like, I don't know, like if I don't know, if I don't know who's is there anybody who's universally beloved in this space? I don't know.
I honestly think the closest is a Jeff Keighley or something. Who's there seems to be a pretty softening maybe. On,
Yeah, maybe, or like I don't know, if Digital Foundry was like, yeah, we probably, if Digital Foundry said the exact same thing, I doubt people would be as upset about it.
Yeah.
And so to me, it's just like, I don't know. I get what they're saying. They could have worded it better, but I forgot about this almost immediately after I saw it.
Yeah, it's just it's like the story of the day on Twitter or whatever. It's not a big deal. It's like I said, I
will say? Sorry, but I just caught the one thing that did bother me about that video wasn't what they said necessarily about like, sevens or like, we probably wouldn't review it anyway because it isn't that good. What bothered me is that they wrote that video as is, and then the last guy says, that's actually a really good explanation. I don't like when people like write self-congratulatory dialogue in their own promos. Like it bothers me immensely, especially because it's just not a good explanation, really. I understood what you were saying, but I'm also like deeply ingrained in this shit.
Yeah, it's interesting.
And you kind of have to put yourself outside of. You have to put yourself in the perspective of the audience sometimes, And it's crazy to me that that's not done more often or more cautiously. But I don't know. This is what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I guess what I wanted to add to this was, I was looking this up, was it's like, I think people look at the scale too seriously. We used to have an expression at IGN, which is like to explore the scale. But the reality is that it's hard to explore the scale when you're truly not getting games that would be at the lower end of the scale. You're not 4 on IGN scale, if it's still the same when I was there, is bad. And I gave very few games that score because I reviewed very few bad games or anything lower than that. And it reminds me, I guess the reference I want to make is, it reminds me a little bit of being in school, and it's like 65 was an F, right? So 66 is a D-, and then so on and so forth. At least it was in my school. And you're getting to the 65 area, and it's like, well, you just kind of failed. And like, how are some of you really getting 30s? Is that really like happening? Maybe once in a while, but I don't think so. I think the mean is probably much higher than that. And so people look at 7 as this average score, but I think it makes perfect sense. And I think I'm sympathetic to that because I worked there for a long time, of course, but I reviewed games, and it is the way it is. I didn't beat the shit out of very many games, not because there aren't games to beat the shit out of, but because you wouldn't review them. So they just made the criminal mistake on the internet of just putting in one thing that people could use to discredit everything else they said, which is why you have to be so careful about what you say and how you put messaging out there. And I've made that mistake many times. Mm-hmm. Okay. Sam Marco 7 wrote in and said, hey, CDC, for Colin, we can all answer this. What are your thoughts on Stranger of Paradise? Having recently finished the Final Fantasy Pixel Remaster, I've been giving it another shot after falling off of it pretty quickly when it launched, and I'm struck by how much it draws directly from the original. With the 4 crystals, Heroes of Light, Jobs, Garland, Chaos, an identical world map, and similar story arc. I don't understand why they didn't lean into the idea of this game being a remake instead of a vague inspired by marketing. Maybe they just didn't want to confuse the investment and quality level with the 7 remake trilogy. Do you have any interest in playing through it? I find myself enjoying it a lot more with the recent context of finishing the original. I don't know, man. Dustin, what do you think about Stranger of Paradise? Did any of us play this game fully? I don't think so.
I played the beginning when they had that trial where you could play the beginning of the game. And I want to play it at some point. I refuse to buy it until it's, I don't know, $20 or something, just because that's what it's worth to me. The beginning of this game is a fucking trip. Let me tell you, it's awesome. It's the perfect type of absurd, cheesy, kind of cringe, but kind of awesome at the same time, and just weird cuts that don't make any sense. I really am curious about it, but it's just, I don't think it's really gone down in price or been on that big of a sale, but I think at some point I'm interested. I'm not super into the gameplay. It's very much in the style of Neo. I mean, being that it's a Team Ninja game, but at some point, for sure.
Yeah, I think that's what I was going to say was my problem with it, is that I think it's kind of too Souls-like for me. I just don't think I'm going to be very interested in playing it from that perspective. So I appreciate the retelling of the story and going back to that world, but yeah, it's personally not for me. I'm not a huge Team Ninja guy. Chris, what do you think of Stranger of Paradise, other than, of course, the ridiculous voice acting and all the rest?
Yeah, I mean, I played through it, or I played through the that trial with it's co-op, right? Because I played it with a friend of mine. I have a memory of playing it with a friend of mine. Yeah, and you know, It made me laugh a lot. I do think there's a lot of entertaining. There's probably a lot of entertainment value to be gleaned from it, just because it's such over the top narrative delivery and acting and just bizarre set pieces. And I remember specifically there was an issue playing the game where, like, whenever you would be locked into a conversation with a person, they didn't quite know how to handle depth of field. So, like, the background would be, like, really out of focus, but instead of out of focus, it would just look really pixely. And then the dithering between, like, the foreground and the background was, like, really bad. And it was, like, it almost gave you, like, kind of like a headache watching it. I played through it. I thought it was fine. I thought it was, like, a little visually noisy, which is kind of my problem with a lot of, modern Final Fantasy. I just kind of don't know what I'm looking at half the time. And I don't know. It just doesn't. It doesn't strike me. It's the type of game that I'm more likely to watch a playthrough of, or like watch the cutscenes of, than one that I'm gonna go sit and kind of trudge through myself. I know myself well enough to know that it's just not my style of game, and also it just kind of looks rough. It's just a rough looking game. Maybe they patched it since then, though. To be fair, because that was like the trial, and I don't know. Maybe there are some quality of life improvements that they've made since then, but even without those minor visual hiccups, I don't know. I don't foresee it being something that's going to really grab me.
All right. Let me see here. Oh, Chef Boy RG wrote in and said, "Hi, Sacred Crew. Who are some of your favorite artists in the industry? I recently pre-ordered Yoshitaka Amano's Final Fantasy art books, and I would love to buy more books and art prints from other artists I admire, such as Yoji Shinkawa, the artist behind the Metal Gear series. Also, do any of you own art books from any of the artists you admire, or books on specific games they've worked on?" Dustin, who are some of your favorite artists in the game space?
Yeah, well, great pull on the Metal Gear artist. I love that all the art for Metal Gear is really, really good. As far as the art books I have a Bloodborne art book. I have a Cuphead, Persona 5, Persona 4. I might have another one, but yeah, it's a lot of it's not even necessarily one particular artist, but I guess just from specific games. The Bloodborne art book is so cool. Seeing the concept art for that is absolutely awesome. And then the Persona ones are cool because there's a lot of showing what characters' original designs were and how they adapted and changed and stuff like that. And then, of course, the Cuphead one is really neat as well, just because they were going for a very particular look. But I've heard the Final Fantasy ones are really great too.
Yeah, for me, I'm really into the Japanese game aesthetic. It's why I think fix my mic here. It's why I think that I like the Venn diagram of me turning in, like, going into weeb territory really comes through Japanese role-playing games, because when I think about iconic character design and what the art aesthetic I really like, I think of an Akira Toriyama with Dragon Quest, but how that also obviously goes into Dragon Ball and how the aesthetic's the same. And so I really dig that. And he had brought up, he had already brought up Shinkawa, as you said, but Amano is another that it's just astounding, especially in the pixel remasters, because they show so much of the original art. And his conceptual designs of characters and monsters are so high level and so sophisticated that it's absolutely incredible. I would pay good money for original Amano art. He's absolutely incredible. And I think a fashion designer by trade, which really shines through in how he draws. The Final Fantasy IV art, the Final Fantasy VI art, I mean, this is incredible shit. And it reminds me a lot of that one Star Wars concept artist, I can't remember his name, that drew things that were only vaguely like the final product, but you could tell that the final product gleamed a lot of inspiration from it. And I think that that's what Amano did to Final Fantasy. It was probably hard for them to really design characters in chibi pixel art based on what he was drawing, but the drawings are the iconic part of Final Fantasy. And then finally, I got to give a shout out to Keiji Inafune. I think just the Robot Master designs of the first game and how iconic those became, and that design aesthetic, that Astro Boy style design is amazing. And so, yeah, my aesthetic, the truly appealing aesthetic in games for me usually comes from Japanese developers. So that's where I would put it. Chris, do you have any answers?
Oh yeah, I mean, I have a bunch of them in New York. I haven't had a chance to go back and grab some, but the ones that come to mind immediately are I have a Death Stranding art book because I thought the art of Death Stranding was just so freaking cool. I have several Halo art books because I just think there's like a very specific artist. I don't know if they're still working at Bungie, but they were really integral to a lot of the early Halo stuff. Shikai Wang, I think was their name, and they just did a lot of and that's if anybody's curious, ShiKaiWang. It's really strange, like anime looking stuff, but it was like for a Combat Evolved, and like there's a lot of like Halo art there too. I think the art of Destiny is like Bungie's art design has always been like fascinating to me. I do have Dragon Ball art books as well. I'm a big art book guy. I like them a lot. I have several other ones from like various games that I can't place right now because they're just all in this big shelf back in my parents' place in New York. I'm probably gonna grab them next month actually because I want to go back home and grab some stuff. But I love art books, and the Death Stranding art book is fantastic. By the way, that one's an amazing one.
Yeah, I'm thinking like when I was at IGN, I used to get a lot of art books, so I just have a bunch of them, but I didn't buy them. Yeah. The only ones that I really went out of my way to get were Mega Man ones. They released some really cool 25th anniversary Mega Man art books and shit ton of concept art and all that nerdy stuff. So otherwise, yeah, I'm not. There's also a field guide that they did with a really high res, beautiful Robot Master art for every one of them, which is really cool too. But generally speaking, I don't go for the art books, but I do love the art itself. All right. Mark Lee wrote in and said, "Hey, CDC, I hate to drag the digital versus physical debate up again, but there's one aspect I haven't heard so far, and that's the rental side of gaming. In the UK, there is still a company that offers this service, and as someone who wants to play all the latest titles, this enables me to play what I want for a fraction of the cost. While I agree that physical gaming is not likely to be sustainable in the longer term, this service for me means I can play what I want on a lower income. Taking PS Plus out of the equation, could you see a future where we have the ability to rent the latest titles digitally as a compromise for the winding down of physical game production? Keep up the amazing work and thanks for all you do." I just don't see it. Like I just don't see why they would want it. It reminds me a lot of, remember we've talked about this on the show a long time ago, but there was a time, and people can go read about it, Google around, where GameStop was seriously investigating in how to sell used digital games. And that quickly hit a wall because everyone's like, what? That doesn't even make any sense. Like you can't make that make sense. However, I do know, and because Mike is a prodigious reader and she's part of our local library here, is that you do get digital. You could rent digital books, and they somehow track that. So the idea of, say, a library system buying 2 copies of Ghost of Tsushima, and then you could somehow rent that from them, but that would require all of this back end architecture. There's just really no reason for the publishers and the hardware manufacturers to be amenable to that at all. And that's, I think, what GameStop encountered was just like, why would we do that? So and by the way, I think there is a rental service in the United States still, right? Isn't GameFly still alive?
Yeah. GameFly is still rocking.
So people do that here too, but I don't know, man, renting games. I appreciate all the different ways. I rented games a shit ton when I was a kid. I appreciate all the different ways that people circumvent the ability, the need to invest a lot, and they kind of pinch pennies, and they either have to or they want to, and I think that's great. But I'm not so sure the industry is concerned with people like you anymore. This was a Nintendo, and again, this can be read about. Nintendo sued over video stores carrying their games. This was like the movie studios were going nuts about video stores, what they used to call video clubs, in the late 70s and into the 80s. And the reality is that physical just has this different set of rights than digital, because you can't make the comparison between the two. And Nintendo kind of was forced to be like, well, I think the argument was like, you can walk into a store, buy this, and rent it. What's stopping you from doing that? And the argument was like, there's nothing stopping you from doing that. That's totally legal. But if there's simply no product to be had, then you would have to force the manufacturers of that product to have a digital version available so they would make less money. That's why I just think these arguments are interesting, but it's not relevant to the way most people play, buy games, et cetera, and so on. Do you have any thoughts on this, Dustin?
Yeah, it is unfortunate just because even for me, even during the PS4 generation, there was a lot of times where we still had a rental store here in Butler, Family Video, which I think there still are some Family Videos out there, but I know they've downsized considerably. That was a great way for me to check out games without a full investment. That's how I first played Metal Gear Solid 5. I wasn't sure if I was going to like it, and I rented it. I think I went and rented it on release day, and then after that rental, I was like, okay, I do have some money. I am going to invest because I'm into this game, and that was during a time where I couldn't just buy any game I wanted or something, and so having that option was great. But you're right in that I don't think that the owners of these stores, so Sony, is interested in you doing that. I think they want you to just plop your money down and buy it. And that's the thing that's kind of shitty in comparison to a service like Steam, where you can play a game for, I think it's up to 2 hours on Steam, and you can get a refund if you don't like it. No questions asked. I think that they do eventually crack down if you're abusing it and renting or buying a million games and then just never fully playing anything or never completing a purchase. But there's been a few different instances for me on Steam where I've done that, where it's just one of those things where it's like, yeah, this isn't clicking for me, and you can get a refund. And I think that's awesome. I would love for Sony to adopt something like that, but yeah, they're just not going to facilitate that. And it's sad, but there's a reason why rental places shut down, because people weren't going to them anymore. So it's nice that there still is that option, though, of GameFly that a lot of people still do use and find that service valuable and a good way to consume games on their budget. So I hope that GameFly continues to exist for those people that need it. But the rental days are long gone.
Yeah, and it's interesting too in the sense that it's hard to even say this without sounding like a dickhead, but the industry shouldn't be particularly, and by this I mean publishers and developers, shouldn't be particularly worried about what people who aren't paying for their games think. You know what I mean? In other words, I think a lot of people have this thing of like, well, how am I can't afford it. I can't access it. I can't. And it's like, why is that the concern of the company that you're not paying in the first place? It's always been a weird argument to me. And I think, in other words, Chris, I think that it makes sense to find the cheapest possible value. That was what rental stores were and all of that. But the digital revolution has rendered that all moot. And I just think,
yeah,
I don't know. I love hearing, I know people rent games from libraries and stuff too. And I think all that stuff's cool. But from a game centric point of view, I'm not entirely concerned about people who don't pay for games access to those games. It's like, well, whatever, where, in other words, a lot of people are paying a lot of money to keep this thing going. And I think the developers and publishers are more worried about them.
Yeah, no, I think you're right. I don't know. Like it's been a very, very long time since I've rented anything. I think the last time I rented a game was probably, I think Halo 3 through GameFly, and then I just ended up buying it. And then that was like the last thing that I rented in quotes. I just think this is an aspect of the industry that's just sort of not on its way out necessarily, because nothing's out forever. There's always going to be like fringe activity in these spaces, but I think for the most part, I'll put it this way: I have the entire series of Seinfeld on DVD physically. I have it. I watch Seinfeld constantly, nearly every day. I haven't cracked open those DVDs since.
Yeah, I gave mine away. I had those too, and I gave them away.
Yeah, I have them just in case, for whatever reason I would need them. But I just have Netflix, and it's just so convenient to just use Netflix. And I pay for that, even though the only thing I watch is something that I own, because it's the convenience of not having to care.
Yeah, interesting.
And I think that's where a lot of people are. And we talk about this sometimes too in this space, but like this is a luxury hobby. This is a very expensive hobby to keep up with, to engross yourself in. And there's a pretty good chance that the people who even have the means to participate in this economy and in this industry and in this hobby are also probably similarly more concerned with convenience than they are about cost. And I think we see that constantly when we see, oh, this game runs at 2 frames a second and it's broken, sold 1 million copies anyway. Because it's like, at least I'll have it for later when they fix it.
Yeah,
it's a sickness in some way, you know. Yeah. It's actually like a kind of a big problem, but it also is. And there's no, you know, that genie's out of the bottle. You know, it's you can't put it back.
I think it's worth saying too, Chris, just because you brought up about games being more or it being an expensive hobby. I think that is true if you're the type of gamer that needs to be playing the latest releases or wants to play the latest releases. We just talked about PlayStation Extra. That's a hell of a deal. I would have died as a kid to have access to that many awesome games at that price.
Oh, so yeah. No, it's crazy.
It is. It's one of those things where now I think that type of gamer that's looking to save money may not need rentals anymore because they're satisfied with other options available now. Like, yeah,
this is the new rental,
right?
Game Pass and you know, PS Plus and, you know, Nintendo Online. That's the new rental. Mm-hmm. Like, why would you, like, how much? I can't even remember how much it costs to rent a single game through GameFly. I think it might have been $20 a month or something, and you get like maybe 1 or 2 games at once. That's hilarious in comparison to today. How much Game Pass is, how much PS Plus is in comparison, and the amount of stuff you have. Also, you keep it if you keep paying. You know, it's just, I don't know, man. It's a different world. If you're looking for, you know, a rental equivalent space, that's where it is the subscription model.
Yeah, and you totally. I'm glad you said that because that's exactly what I was going to say. Which I had two things to say. Which was, one was, it seems like this has all been consumed by subscriptions, and this is good for gaming, I think, because at least the money, even if you look at these corporations as soulless, blood-sucking entities, which they are, the money at least stays internal. So think about someone going and buying a game for $60 and then renting it 100 times. And that's what I was saying was, I don't begrudge people getting the best deal they can. I also don't begrudge the industry. And this is how I felt about online passes, frankly, where I thought it was just a bad idea because I didn't think it was going to work and it didn't work. But I was like, I don't begrudge them trying to figure out a way from you stopping doing this. You know, they have every reason to stop you from doing it. And I'm actually kind of surprised, although it's tasteful and maybe they didn't look at it as a strategy, but there was a strategy to be employed by a more forceful representative or a lobbyist for gaming, where it's like, hey guys who pay for video games, why are you so cool with people not paying for video games? And they could have just set that seed, right? And had like this civil war where it would have been fought amongst everyone else, but that never really happened. But it goes back to this MO I have with games, which is you get what you pay for. So if you want the security of the games you want in a timely fashion and quality on a console you like, then you got to pay for that. And if you want something less than that, then you're going to get less than that. And you can't imagine that the manufacturers are going to have much more patience for it, you know? But we'll see what happens. Digital rental is not going to happen. I personally don't think that happens because it's like you said, Dustin, you could go the Steam route of just giving a person ability to return the game, or I guess you could just have the subscription service, but it doesn't. I go on Amazon and I rent movies when I watch them for knockback, but it doesn't seem the same to me. Could you rent God of War Ragnarok for $20 for 3 days? I mean, is that really a good deal? I don't know. I mean, that's what it would cost probably. So I think, I don't know. But this goes back into what people have been saying about the physical games and what you had said, and came so amply to their defense, Dustin, was that there's the ability to sell back games. But again, this is something that the industry does not care about. They don't want you to do that. They want the way gaming grows is for money on the outside to come in, not for money to recirculate. That's one option, and that's good for the consumer, worse for the publisher and the developer. So again, no problem with you chasing that kind of stuff. But again, you have to wonder why the publishers and developers haven't shut this down. And just look at PSVR 2 about how Sony is suddenly comfortable being like, we don't even really care if we work with any of the retailers anymore at all. It's like not important to us. Times are changing.
You could argue though, Colin, with the used game thing, in that I agree that or publishers don't fully want that, but people that are often selling their games are putting their money back into new games.
Right. But the point is that the money, and that is true, but when you do that, there's a rip. Right. And then when you do that again, there's another rip. And so what I'm saying is that they don't care about that. They want the $70 from the fucking banker who made his money in the banking industry and bring that shit into the games industry. That's an infusion of new capital. And I think that they just look at that. And so it's a little company townish in some sense, if that makes any sense. Like the old idea of you spend your money, you make your money, you spend your money, you make your money. And it all just happens in this same ecosystem, and you never actually get the money. And that's a increasingly devaluing way to circulate money for everyone except for GameStop. So
yeah. I guess there is. I understand what you're saying about the rip, and I think that that's definitely a way of looking at it. To me, or a way that they look at it. To me, it's just like there are some people that are never gonna buy a new game unless absolutely forced to in a digital future, and then they just might be out.
But the point is that they don't count to the publishers and developers. They don't care.
But they're still in your ecosystem, and they may be buying PlayStation Plus. They may be buying, they're still, or they're buying a new hardware. Maybe they bought the hardware used, or maybe they buy a controller. I guess that there's some people that they may not get the full amount from, but they were never going to in the first place, and they can get them in smaller ways anyway. And that's just going to bolster that community that you want to be as large as possible. So I agree that PlayStation wants as many people that get their money directly into their system, but I think there's value in having people that you're not necessarily making the full amount just because they were never going to be those 100%ers either way.
Yeah, and it's totally devil's advocacy on my part, because it's like no rational person. In fact, we talked about this on Constellation with Amazon, which was one of the topics recently, where it's like no rational person is going to look at Amazon and be like, well, I want to just spend more money. The question is like, how did we get to that point, and who does it benefit and all that? And that's what I think is interesting, because I remember making that argument back in the day when people were like, well, if I can't rent games or buy games used, I'm just not going to play games anymore. And definitively 10 years ago, I would have been like, they don't give a flying fuck if you don't play games anymore. Today, it's more complicated because of not the hardware, but because of the subscriptions and the DLC and the expansions and memberships and all that. That does change it. But when people would say during, let's say, the PS3 era, if I can't buy my games used or anything, and they're going to have this online pass and I'm out, and I'm like, they don't care. Earnestly, they don't care. But yeah, and they would tell you that behind the scenes. But these days, it is different, because these days it's like player numbers are reported, revenue, churn, playtime. If someone buys for instance, if someone buys, it's a bad example because it's all digital and whatever, but Destiny 2 or something, they bought the original Destiny used and somehow whatever, and they added and they played it for 1,000 hours, it might be more valuable for Bungie to have not made any money from that person and to bring the mean value of game time up by having that person play, if that makes any sense. In other words, it's a statistical boon for them. That's where the complexity comes from. So there's no doubt that it's different now. But I used to hate when people made that argument. I'm like, it's not a valid argument. The online passes during the PS3 era were a stupid idea because it nickel and dimed people for no real reason. It was just an inelegant way to solve the problem. That's why it was a bad idea. It didn't go away because they were afraid of losing people. It went away because it just was inelegant. Didn't work. What was it, like Uncharted 3 had one, PlayStation All-Stars.
Yeah.
Starhawk, I think. Yeah, so
I think Uncharted 2 had one as well, if I remember correctly.
Which one?
Uncharted 2 had one.
Uncharted 2 did? Yeah.
I think so. I think you're right.
So as early as 2009. All right. Let's keep going. Eric Shutt wrote in. Oh, I'm sorry, Ernie Shutt. Not even close to Eric. Ernie Shutt wrote in and said, all right, sacred fellers, with Zelda reviews dropping this morning and clocking a whopping 97 on OpenCritic, is it safe to say that the Zelda franchise is the highest quality franchise of all time? Remember, no clucking. So I was looking at the scores today before we recorded. By the time you hear this, the game will be out on your Switch. I'm sure many millions of you will be playing it. I assume this is good for 25 million after 2 years, something like that, I would say. So it's going to be a big old game. 97 is a no joke score. I saw Game Informer was trending because they gave it a 9.75 and people were freaking out about that. Is Zelda the highest quality franchise of all time? Maybe, but there's no doubt that Nintendo has their finger on the quality button and knows exactly what they're doing with games. And so we can talk about the quality franchise stuff, but I really want to know what you guys think about this game coming up and how you're going to spend if and how you're going to spend time with it. So Dustin, let's start with you. Zelda, what is it? Tears of the Kingdom, out now when everyone's hearing this. What are your thoughts?
I'm really excited, just because I wasn't excited for a long time, in that I knew that they were reusing the map, which I'm not saying is necessarily a bad thing, but I guess this game was an unknown quantity for so long. And so I've not read any reviews. I've seen a couple tweets of people saying stuff, but all the things that I was concerned about it maybe being too similar to Breath of the Wild, no one seems to say is a problem. That this game is very much a sequel, very much I can't remember who. So some outlet or somebody said that Breath of the Wild now, in comparison to this game, feels like a first draft. And that's really intriguing to me.
Well, so Breath of the Wild felt like a first draft at the time, quite frankly.
Well, I don't agree with that, but
you don't think it was like a testing ground? It felt like a testing ground to me. There's so little in it.
So little in Breath of the Wild?
Absolutely. It's like a physics game, which is cool. Like, I like that, but
there's over 100 shrines. There's
that's like mobile game. It's like a mobile game. Like, I understand what you're saying. It's like those shrines made the game feel cheap to me. Like, I was like, where are the dungeons? The real ones.
Well, I can agree with you on that.
And apparently this one has it, which is awesome. I'm actually super excited about it. I'm stoked on it, but
I know everything about it because I read the Kotaku spoiler.
Yeah. But and it seems cool. Like, I'm totally into it because it seems like there's actually Zelda stuff in it. But like, the first game felt like it was more exploration heavy. It was like, all right, here's a physics engine where you could do all sorts of really cool things, and there are all these systems that interact in a cool way. Here are these 4 divine beasts that I found to be very, very underwhelming. And then there's like a big castle at the end that I never even fucking got to because I didn't care. Now it feels like, oh, there's actually a game here on top of the foundation that they built. I always felt like Breath of the Wild was a really, really good foundation that just didn't have enough to keep me invested.
Are you going to play this new one?
Yeah. I think so. My Switch needs something to do, quite frankly. It's what I've been saying for a while. Like, it's been sitting there. So sad. It's so sad. It's sitting on top of my CRT right now. Just like waiting to be used. And it's like, you know what? This happens once every several years that a Switch game comes out that I'm interested in. Yeah, why not?
I'm curious about the performance aspect. And I've been thinking, I think we talked about it last week about how, like, okay, well, we're okay with playing this 30 FPS Zelda game, but other, Jedi Survivor is a problem, which I can understand some people pointing out this hypocrisy, and not necessarily to me or Chris or whatever or us, but just in general. And I can understand that. I think Jedi Survivor and some of these other games have like particular. There's a difference between, at least to me, a game dipping in lower FPS and then having consistent hitching problems, like sudden stops. That's totally different. And trust me, next week, if Zelda has horrible technical issues, I will mention it. Yeah, and I've already seen some stuff that there's some parts where the frame rate dips lower than 30. And that's unfortunate for how good this game sounds. But
well, they made it on a toaster, so I mean, it's pretty impressive considering that.
Well, dude, seeing just some of the clips of how Zelda. Wow, big mistake there. How Link is flying around the world and the way that it loads in the game, pretty impressive for what they're working with on the Switch, for sure. And it's important to remember that Breath of the Wild was also released on Wii U. And not that Wii U and Switch, that there's a huge difference, but there's definitely a power difference there. So I'm just right now, it feels good how much I've remained away from the preview coverage and away from the review, that I'm just so excited to dive in and be like, okay, I think I said this last week, but 6 years you've been working on this game and you reused a large amount of the map. What was that 6 years spent on? That's what I'm so excited to discover.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. I'm excited to see how everyone feels about it, and we'll be tracking that over the days, weeks, months to come. It's not for me. I know people think it's a very like Colin's over Nintendo thing, but the reality is that I bought a Switch and I got Zelda the day it came out and played it for about 20 hours and I just wasn't into it. There was just, it's actually more to what Chris was saying, where I'm like, I don't feel like this is a Zelda game. What is this? And that's cool for a lot of people, and a lot of people like that, but the dungeon stuff is more what I'm looking for. And I know that that's here in this game, but they've already long lost me. And the destructible weapons and the climbing and fall, I was like, oh my God, this is so annoying. And it starts raining and I'm like, oh, I can't take it. It just wasn't for me. It just wasn't for me. It's not what I loved about Zelda. And I was a big Zelda fan when I was younger.
Yeah.
But this to me is a new kind of Zelda. And I don't think that it's even the first of its kind in some sense. I mean, it is, but Skyward Sword seems to have started that more like mega big Zelda thing. Wind Waker had a huge map, but a lot of it was devoid of anything. That was part of the reason. It was like an archipelago. So it was kind of cool. But so I don't want to blame Breath of the Wild for doing what it did to Zelda. I think it started with Skyward Sword in some way, but it's just like, I'm not looking for this 100-hour, 200-hour, like fucking free for all. It's like, that's not Zelda at all, in my opinion. Zelda is like a tight 10 to 20 hour game, always, until that point. So to me, Link to the Past, Majora's Mask, and the first one, even Zelda 2, I mean, these will always be champion games in my mind.
Mm-hmm.
All right, finally, let's see. Hi Senpai wrote in, said, Dear Sacred Butts, I always see people wearing shirts adorned with branding from popular bands such as Rolling Stones, Nirvana, and AC/DC. Never 311, sorry, Colin. I think I've only seen like 2 311 shirts in the wild in my entire life. Apart from the excellent LSM merch, what games-related branding or logos do you consider iconic or could be recognizable out in the wild on such paraphernalia, or what do you think would be quite tasteful? I love this question because I continue to investigate and I have custom made shirts made, as people know, and I like getting in-game logos. That's like my new thing that I'm really chasing, is like in-game obscure fake logos from the fake world of a game. Yeah. So the example is I have that Astra Industries shirt, and Astra Corporation, and Astra is the fake company in Returnal. Yeah. So that's why I got that made. And I actually got the art directly from Housemarque, which was awesome for them to send it to me and share it with me. And I have more of those kinds of things coming up. I have an Uncharted shirt coming up with what was it? Shoreline logo. That's one of the ones I'm getting made from Uncharted 4. So I love stuff like that, but it's fun to not have it be recognized. I have a shirt with a Firefly logo on it, and someone at the supermarket said something to me. And then I have a Naughty Dog shirt that just says Naughty Dog and someone said that to me, but I wasn't even thinking about it at the time. As far as more obscure stuff, I don't know. I remember when I was growing up, it was cool to buy like Hot Topic things with mushrooms and Triforces, and that's kind of trite at this point. What do you think, Chris?
As far as like merch, like I've always been like I feel this way about tattoos as well. Like if you get a tattoo of, you know, something that relates to like a game or a movie or a brand in some way, I don't want everybody to know it. You know, I don't want somebody who's never played BioShock or never seen anything about BioShock outside of like the logo of BioShock to know that my tattoo is a BioShock tattoo. You know what I mean? Like I want it to be subtle, or like you have to have played the game in some way, or even like there are some people that I know who've played BioShock entirely and don't know that didn't even think about the chains on a Jack's wrist or whatever, which I have. But I don't know. I think for shirts and stuff, like I'm big on that stuff too. Although I've never bothered to go get them made.
Yeah, I mean, I have
a
guy that just a friend of mine a friend of the show actually owns a printing company.
That's so convenient because there's so many like fake Halo companies that I wish I had shirts for, and I'm like,
oh my god, we can have that. Cool. That can be that can be arranged in no time for you.
That'd be great.
Yeah.
Yeah, I gotta cobble up some.
I can put you up. Yeah, we basically just pay at cost.
Yeah, I would do that.
Yeah, and that's how I got. That's how I got the Wonka shirt and all this shit, like my Crimson Guard shirt from G.I. Joe and everything. I have to get new ones. He actually sent. I still haven't gone through them. I actually bought through him a bunch of new T-shirts to try out different sizes because I'm getting like, I don't want to say chubby. I don't think that's the right. I'm actually bulking out a little bit, and I just feel like my shirts don't fit right anywhere anymore. On my body, so I need to I think just move up to large. I've been holding on to medium for dear life, and it's just I'm 6 feet tall. It's maybe time to move on. So yeah, Dustin, do you have any answer for this?
I don't know. Gaming shirts are interesting because I know that some people feel that if you wear them, it comes off as really immature or something like that. And I've obviously never felt that way since most of my closet of shirts is either gaming or I have a lot of anime shirts with my Evangelion. I have a Berserk shirt. I really like the loud ones for certain situations, and I also like the subtle ones. This one actually I'm wearing is from Uniqlo when they did their Mario collaboration, and it's just a pocket tee, and it's got a little chain chomp
cute
coming out of the pocket. Just a nice.
Yeah, those guys
nice
they do cool little collaborations. They did those Final Fantasy shirts, right? Yeah.
They've done a lot of cool stuff. And so, I don't know, to me, I like the subtle stuff. I like the loud stuff. Being able to do the custom shirts, I need to hit up our plug as well, because I've been thinking I need to get some One Piece shirts, because so much of the shirts now for One Piece are 500 episodes away or characters that I don't know, or versions of characters. And so I need to get some of that as well. But I don't know. I love wearing gaming nerd weeb shit. That's just, I don't know. I've always been that type of person that I like to wear the things I like. I had Iron Maiden Vans slip-ons when I was in junior high that people thought were grotesque, but I always thought they were. I proudly wore them until I had to duct tape them together.
Grotesque is.
I wish I still had
grotesque
them.
is a funny word. I love that word.
The problem is that there's so many. The only ones that I would consider really wearing are ones that are so out of the public eye now that there's no real way to. You know what I mean? You can't stumble across medieval merch.
Dude, our guy can make that.
No, but that's what I mean. That's what I'm saying. It's I all the stuff that I would consider wearing is just all this really obscure, really ancient shit that that just doesn't work. I saw actually at the Creator Clash, I saw some guy with a Crash Team Racing shirt, and I was like, dude, this is amazing that you have this. And it was an old one.
Dude. Chris, we got to shout out, because I know you have the hoodie and I have the shirt. It doesn't fit me quite as well because I think it's Japanese sizing. Maybe not. Maybe I've just gotten bigger. But the Fragile Express merch.
Oh yeah, I love the Fragile.
10 out of 10.
Yeah, that is one of my favorite hoodies. That I own. That Fragile Death Stranding hoodie. Oh.
Yeah, with it has the bone, the hands.
The hands on
on the back, or the.
Except every time I read it, I think about A Christmas Story.
Oh.
Because I think about Fragile.
Yeah.
All right, my friends. Well, thank you guys for writing in. 6 good questions from the audience. Of course, you can continue to submit those over on Patreon, patreon.com/laststandmedia. We appreciate your love, kindness, and support over there. It is time to go. It's the end of Sacred Symbols episode. What is this, 254? Let's get closing comments. Chris, closing comments.
Yeah. Honestly, I forgot Zelda was coming out tomorrow until today. I just realized it. I thought it was still weeks away. So now I'm trying to figure out what to do about it. Do I get it digitally? Something about Switch feels like I should get big games physically. I don't know what it is, but that console compels me to do that. But I would have also imagined that's kind of rough getting a physical copy.
I don't know. I would maybe just go into Target or something tomorrow and just see.
Yeah, maybe.
Walmart.
But then I have to leave my house a whole thing.
Yeah, or just pre-order on Amazon. I'm sure they'll get you one this weekend.
Yeah,
dude, if you're in LA, you probably can get it
at the locker
tomorrow morning or something with Amazon.
Yeah, probably. Yeah.
I'm gonna look right now. I'm curious. And I'm here in suburban rural Virginia, basically. Let's see. Zelda. Oops. Tears of the Kingdom. Free delivery tomorrow.
The game?
Yeah. Right now if you buy it.
Yeah, I'll grab it. Fuck it, whatever.
So that would be launch day for you.
There you go.
Where the hell is this game?
Okay. Dustin, closing comments, my friend.
I'm going to go out. So I have a few copies of Zelda ordered because I snagged one before they upped the price. And then Amazon did a thing where they were selling it for $50 if you went through this stream. So I'm going to give one of those for my friend, one of them for Holly. But tomorrow morning, I think I'm going to go out, thinking McDonald's breakfast.
Ooh.
A nice McGriddle.
Yeah.
Go to Target. I'm trying to get the Pro Controller. There's a Zelda Pro Controller. I don't need it. But I've had my Pro Controller since launch. The stick feels a little sticky. A sticky stick, And so I'm going to get that, get the game, get some breakfast. Looking forward to it. I like a nice relaxing morning going out and getting a game.
Well,
so
I'm excited for you to or for both of you to play it and hope you guys enjoy it. I'm going to get back to Dead Cells and Forspoken this weekend, I think. Although I have some things I need to do this weekend too, so who knows how much game time is. And then next weekend my sister gets married, so I'm totally going to be off the radar for that. So, let's see here. All right, that's it. That's all we have. We went almost 4 hours. It's a good episode. Thank you all out there for your love, kindness, and support of all things Sacred Symbols, Last Stand Media, patreon.com/Last Stand Media to support us over there. LastStandMedia.store for merch, including free domestic shipping on all stickers. You know the drill. We'll see you next time. Until then, goodbye.
See ya.
Take care, guys.
Sacred Symbols, a PlayStation podcast, is a product and trademark of Last Stand Media and Colin's Last Stand LLC, and is proudly recorded in the USA. The show is conceived by, is written by, and is directed by me, Colin Moriarty. My co-hosts are Chris Raygun Maldonado and Dustin Furman. The show is produced by executive producer Dustin Furman. It's edited by associate producer Ben Smith. All of Last Stand's theme music is by my best friend, Ramon Narvaez. As you know, all of Last Stand's shows, including Sacred Symbols, are fan-funded on Patreon at patreon.com/laststandmedia. The following names are at the producer level on Patreon, our highest tier, and we're grateful for your thoughtful and kind contributions to our independent endeavor. Thank you.